tiny people, then we play with them. Ooh, ooh. We paint tiny people, then we play with them.
Hello and welcome to episode 20 of Miniatures Every Other Monthly.
Yeah, we got around to it eventually.
We did. After an extremely busy month since our first live Miniatures Monthly in Cardiff.
Yeah, it feels like we've both been stuck in some sort of time warp where that seems like a different year.
It
almost,
is, yeah.
like a different
to such an
dimension.
extent that I actually forgot that it had happened.
Yes.
And that it was a real thing that we and 30 to 40 lovely people put loads of time and energy into.
Yeah, sure.
It literally just got eclipsed by one of the busiest months of my life. It's been nice to kind of, in preparation for today's pod, look back at it and go, oh yeah.
That happened and it was awesome.
Yeah, that did happen and it was awesome. So yeah, apologies, that we missed, a month again. But we're back now, to round off the year with, a sleepy meditation on, recent hobby stuff. I am Chris Thurston. I forgot to introduce myself, and that is Tom Senior.
Hello, here I am again. Back to talk about the miniatures.
Yeah. So, I think because we have left such a big gap, there's not really much mileage in talking news, I think.
Yeah, not a huge amount has really grabbed me as well towards the end of the year. There have been some nice Battle Force boxes, things like that, but nothing that has been like, whoa, need to do this.
Yeah, I found that it's like actually been quite nice to have a kind of, a sober dismount to the, to the year, in that I actually quite like the look of a lot of things. I realized looking at all of them, like almost all of the battle forces made me, which are, to clarify, the £100 army in a box deals that Games Workshop do over Christmas.
You save a lot of money on those things.
You do. So, almost all of them made me go, I do want that. So much so that I've decided to buy none of them.
You haven't caved.
No, like, so, I was tempted by the Slaves to Darkness one because it's a good deal.
Yeah.
Some models I have already, like the Manticore, but you can always have two Manticores.
You can.
You know how I feel about Idneth. That's a very good deal box as well.
It's a lovely box as
I've
well.
wanted to dry brush some dinosaurs for a long time.
Some lizardmen.
Yeah, even part of me is a bit like, there's things I like about Daughters of Cain. That could be an interesting painting challenge to kind of like work with and the new models are great. I love Marathi, and so I'd love an excuse to paint her, etc.
Yeah,
and
the Admech box is really good as well.
The Admech box is really good. I have a Necron army on the works. Maybe I need to add a giant pile of more Necrons. The only issue is I have so many Necron overlords. I don't know what to do with them from various sources. And I really don't want to paint the big Necron bus.
Yeah, fair.
But then I was like, you know what? The one thing that put me off doing Imperial Fists a little while ago is I don't want to hand paint the fist symbol.
They come with it in the box. Yeah.
An upgrade sprue. Maybe I need that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's how they get you.
Yeah. And so I've been on that entire journey. And then, also out this weekend was, Wrath and Rapture, which is the new Slanesh stuff and the new Karanak and the Flash Hounds. I was like, maybe I do have most of a Khorne army. Maybe that is a responsible purchase.
Full chaos, kind of multicolored chaos.
Maybe I should buy that. And I think, you know what? I actually really like that new Manius Calgorm model. Why do I?
Yeah.
But, and then, the net result of all of this, spoilers, for my Christmas plans has been, I think I just need a better box to keep my paints in, and that's about it.
That's good. I think I might have, dipped into one of those many sets if it wasn't the fact that I luckily got, Blackstone Fortress for my birthday. And, so far that's just given me all the hobby that I could ever want for the next sort of 2 or 3 months.
So I suspect that we'll talk about this a bunch, when we can get into it. Cause yeah, I think just opening by talking about what we've been up to hobby wise. Blackstone Fortress is, no joke, the best box Games Workshop have done since I got back into the hobby. I think, like, it almost feels like it's come full circle. Like, I got into the hobby with Silver Tower. And this is just better Silver Tower.
That's interesting because I was interested in your perspective on that because I didn't buy Silver Tower or paint it. I just enjoyed playing with your models. And for me, this is my first kind of, experience with one of GW's kind of premium,
Creamium.
premium.
No, Creamium, Tom.
Yeah,
You
so
said
Creamium.
it, own it.
Yeah, one of their premium, just really varied, beautiful hobby boxes that is a self-contained game with its own rule set, but also all these really beautiful, varied sculpts as well. And I wonder how does it compare to Silver Tower as an experience so far?
I think, like, miniatures wise, I think it's really good. Like, it shows off the change in the technology now that push fit is more of a thing. Like, I'm a big, if models are going to be monopose, I much prefer them to be push fit because it gives you some freedom in things like sub-assemblies.
Yeah.
Like, they're really nicely designed for, like, being able to take them out of the bases and things quite easily. I think it's a less diverse set than Silver Tower was.
Yeah.
In some ways, like, obviously, like, Silver Tower had a more of a, but also quite similar in some ways. Like, there's, you know, both of them have essentially Chaos Cultists, Beastmen, and leadership characters, and
some random gribblies.
And some random gribbles.
Yeah.
And a sort of, a cast of heroes that represents sort of the diversity of the fiction. But I think, oh man, it's like, well, so there's two sides to it. I think as a box of models, it benefits a lot from feeling like such a cool exploration of a universe that you know really well, but want to see that stuff. Like Silver Tower, the models are great, but you still don't really know how some of them fit into the universe. Like, we don't know what faction the Mistweaver Sai is from still.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we still don't know where the Tenebral Shard is from. He's presumably from Malerians, new dark elves that don't exist yet, etc. Right? Yeah. Like, there's a lot of stuff in there that's like the Excelsior War Priest. Like, you got free cities, but there's no real faction for that character to belong to.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel quite as knitted in, whereas like getting something like, you know, there's been more rogue traders around recently, but like getting a navigator, for example, or like, you know, a Kroot mercenary, like these sort of characters from the fiction, the rogue guardsmen, which are such amazing sculpts.
Yeah.
It's such a really nice, almost feels like a treat. Like, you're getting this sort of like little glimpse into a corner of the universe you wouldn't normally get. And even little subtle things like the fact that, you know, this shows, I don't know at what point they decided that, simply doing more female sculpts was going to be important to them. And it's certainly not, at parity yet, but the fact that several of the traitor guard are women, the fact that, the half of the Negavolt cultists, because it's two sculpts basically, are female. Like, all of that stuff is like just little incremental steps forward that make the whole thing feel like, you know, a kind of consolidation of lots of different things that GW have gotten good at in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I really, really love the selection of heroes they've got, because the easiest thing to do would be like, here's a Space Marine, here's a Tech Priest, here are the big heroes that you know from this universe. But when I see those models together, I think this is the start of an awesome kind of side series novel or something.
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine them being in scenes. There's some really great art. There's a piece of art that I love where I think it's just called Precipice or something. And there's a mechanic game for being in the precipice just before you go into the Blackstone Fortress, where they're all gathered there. And this art just shows them just kind of in conversation, preparing their weaponry and stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to read that book. I want to see that film. I want to play through that fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's a different fantasy to the high powered Space Marine type fantasy. And there's been, 40K has always been great in its sort of sub-fiction, picking out the people under the surface, like your hive gangs and things like that, Necromunda. And this feels like a different version of that, where it's sort of picking out really important characters from the hidden corners of 40K lore that you have not been seen before. And the Navigator, for me, particularly embodies that, because it so fits into the 40K aesthetic and the Imperial aesthetic, but it's also a completely unique thing unto itself, the design of the character. Again, it reminds me of Dune a lot as well, which I love that the more they lean into that stuff, like I really enjoy that as well. And it just painting that up just felt like exciting in a way. And exciting bring to life this part of the fiction.
I think they've done a really good job at the fiction. Like particularly the fact that, you know, Precipice, which is, so this like ramshackle space station built at the edge of the Blackstone Fortress, which is itself at the center of this vast debris field. The idea that allows them to relax some of 40K's kind of absolute story limitations, like, you know, Xenos scum must always be set on fire. You know, having this kind of, you know, framing it, not having it be like, because obviously everyone wants the characters to work together from time to time, but you got to bend stories to make that work in that fiction. And a lot of the time, it's, oh, there are Tyranids, so we're all friends now. Like,
yeah, sure.
Whereas this is really simple. It's that, like, basically no one, that part of the fiction booklet's really good for just explaining why, like, you know, people have to start breaking the rules of their societies because otherwise no one gets anything. And it's like the sort of the transport chambers in the Blackstone Fortress can only hold 4 people. So you can't send an army. So no one army can really show up to do anything. And if you make trouble on Precipice, there's a kind of an accord in place that means everyone kills you. So it's like, just behave yourselves, basically.
It's kind of lawless, almost like a Mos Eisley type thing where
Yeah.
individuals who are willing to sort of let slip the bounds of their social, you know, responsibilities can work alongside each other. And the Recruit mercenary in particular, that reminds me so much of Star Wars. Like, that could be a character in the background, and Mos Eisley Canteen just making deals with other people. And so much of that character just, you can sort of see, intuit a lot about what that personality is like from the model. And,
Yeah.
I think it's quite telling that for me, the weakest model from the heroes is the kind of, fanatical priest. Because that's the one that sort of doesn't quite make sense to me in that context, where if they believe so much, there's just ranting and raving. And there's lots of like fun stuff about the model. The fact that he doesn't wield a weapon, he wields a book full of.
He has a mace.
He's got a mace and he's got
yeah.
a book, but then he's got a servo skull that carries his gun for him and does the shooting for him, which is great. But I don't understand why he would like be working with the other.
Yeah, like I think, he's like the sort of mission of faith thing, but it's slightly compromised. Like I am, have you chance to play it yet?
No, I did sort of like test game at live event because they had like a test table.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And it's like, it seems to be heavily reliant on, a lot of, the previous box, what's it called? The, Silver Tower. So it seems like the dice pool stuff works in a similar way, but there's like loads of extra, like.
I would just, there's quite a few extra mechanics that are really good. I've played 2.5 full expeditions now. Over the course of 2 afternoons. And, in that we've used like my 2, cause the way it works, one of the big differences with Silver Tower, there's lots of like little changes, but one of the things I really like is it is designed for 4 explorers. You must always have 4 explorers. The campaign as a whole ends if they die because they can die permanently. That's very different. Like, it's not like Silver Tower is designed for people to just like sort of throw together a random team and go on an adventure, and it works really well. Whereas this, like, the status of all of the explorers is kind of important, more like a kind of XCOM kind of thing.
Yeah.
And because they can die permanently, that's one of your fail states is you can't field 4, basically. And that's what that has allowed them to do, is balance the game around there being 4 explorers at all times, which changes some of the kind of more finicky aspects of the kind of AI, basically, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it is I've been playing it mostly, with my friend Will. And, when you've got 2 of you, you each have 2 characters. And then if there are 3 of you, you have still 4 characters, but you each have 1. And then, another one rotates between sort of the available players based on who's the leader for a given phase. And then if there's obviously 4 of you, then you each get 1 character and so on. So it kind of scales really nicely.
Yeah.
So I've been playing it with my main being the Recruit mercenary because, he's great. I love him to bits. He's very fun. He's just on a mission to eat everything and turn it into experience. That's what he does.
Cool. That's cool.
And the Flamer lady, Pius Vaughn,
awesome.
who, so she comes with from the same ship as Thaddeus the Purifier, who's the Ministorum priest.
Okay.
Because the idea is she
sense.
is like a hive ganger, like a Necromunda hive ganger who he has kind of turned into a zealot. So she's she's like she's the character that everyone thought was a Stormcast because of her headdress. But she's basically a 40k equivalent of a flagellant. It's really interesting, and how she works is really fun. She's, and one thing I really like about it is like, I've kind of like, I agree that sometimes it doesn't feel quite as right for me for there to be a Ministorum priest running around the corridors bashing people on the head with a hammer. Not that anything makes loads of sense.
I mean,
but
that's
like,
very 40k in its own way.
But there's a great, every ship has, every character has a ship, but some of them share a ship. So both the priest and Flamer Lady both share, a ship called the Clarion. And, which is a word that'll come back later. And every ship has like some kind of effect on the game. most of them have like a once per expedition ability. So like the cruise ship can do like target tracking and like light up a ship.
That's rad.
But the Clarion one is really funny based on the mind's eye sense of what happens. So basically, one of the things that's a big difference over Silver Tower, which I think you'd really like, because, so in Silver Tower, one of the weaknesses of it, I think, is basically all the players go and can pass, kind of initiative between each other. So basically you can almost always go optimally and use all their actions and do stuff like that. And then the enemies go, and then the players go. In this, you create a deck of initiative cards, which is enemy groups 1 to 4, which are randomly drawn. Its random scenario generation is so much better than Silver Towers.
Right, yeah.
And then you include whatever heroes are present in that deck and you deal them out. And that is your initiative order for a given round of combat. So initiative changes every single round of combat. It's not one set of initiative for the whole fight, as it might be in a different game. It's like every single turn, the order changes completely. But when that order is set, you have the opportunity to make what's called a gambit, which is a really interesting system. So what happens is, if you want, you can discard one of your action dice, which you use in order to take actions. Any dice of any value, you discard it, and that allows you to try and pass an agility check with your character. And if you can do that, you can swap, either up or down the initiative tracker with any enemy group, with the closest enemy group. So you can swap them with you. And if you get a critical success, you can swap with any enemy group. So there's this game of like, do I want to sacrifice an action to try and leapfrog the initiative? Because that might be really important. It might be important to go first or last. There's so much to it. Like, I feel like I could bang on about how cool it is, but we should both play it because it's,
that sounds rad.
But the thing that the Clarion does is it honks so loudly. The spaceship somehow makes such a loud and holy noise, like exhortation to the Emperor, that it basically shocks everybody into being able to do a gambit for free. So every single person can try and move up the initiative track because of the really loud, holy loudspeaker on the front.
Moment of confusion and everyone's scrabbling to get an advantage. That's fantastic.
Which is great.
Yeah, that's extremely good. So you also generate, the arenas, they're arenas rather than just 3 rooms at a time, which seems like a different dynamic as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So in Silver Tower, you almost like build this maze that stretches out in front of you as you encounter each new room, basically. In this, you build a deck, and the instructions for building like your kind of exploration deck vary from depending exactly on what you're doing, but there's a standard way of doing it. So, cause you have, so the principal way of doing it is going on an expedition, and you create a deck which is 4 combat encounters, which are preset maps, basically, although there's then a random element, and 4 more like choose your own adventure type moments.
Cool.
Some of which can involve having set up a map to resolve something. And some of them are more like just a description of something that happens, and you have to do some kind of mini game or like some test with dice in order to kind of like try and, so like one of them is like the door opens, and as it does, you see a vault full of like archaeotech, but the door immediately closes, and the security system's about to activate, and you've got 1 round of combat to try and do 12 damage to the door.
Right.
Which is really hard. So everyone has to do a combat check with all of their weapons. And if you can do 12 damage to the door, you get what's on the other side. And if you can't, the lift doors close and you go somewhere else.
No, that's exciting.
It's like,
that's super cool. There are sort of like micro versions of that in Silver Tower, like, you've got to jump across this chasm, stack up some dice and stuff. They're really fun little moments, but this sounds a bit more involved.
It is. And then you've got stuff like, so when you get the combat map, it's so good. I'm bang on about how good Blackstone Fortress is. But basically, you set up your tiles and they're beautiful, like hexes, basically.
Which are like the production in the box is absolutely stunning.
You build the arena, and then the arena will have 4, what they're called discovery markers, basically 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each of them is the objective you've got to go and search to find the stuff you want for the campaign as a whole. Yeah. But also, each of them is also the spawn point for an enemy group. And then to determine what the enemy groups are, you draw cards from the encounter deck. And each card has 4 lines on it. So it'll be like, so if you draw the card, and if you've drawn it for point 1, so you take whatever's on point 1. Right. So, basically normally the card will say it's this type of enemy, but exactly how many will depend on what node you draw them onto. Right, yeah. And then sometimes instead of it'll be like 3 of them are enemies, but if this particular card is drawn on node 3, instead of spawning a group of enemies, it applies a modifier to the entire level. Like, the lights have gone out. So all ranged combat is limited, but there's no enemy group there. And so it's this really intricate kind of like
random generation
system.
Right. Yeah.
And it creates really interesting scenarios, by itself. And then you get really cool things. So that when you first set up the game, that, encounter deck is somewhat limited. It's basically Urgles, Spindle Drones, Traitor Guardsmen. That's basically it. And then at the end of an expedition, you keep going until you've either exhausted the deck or you choose to go home.
Yeah.
Because you can just be in a position where you can't go any further because you're really badly wounded. When you do that, you draw a card from the legacy deck. And you just add to this. It comes with all of these like great Ziploc bags, which are just for like the evolving legacy nature of the game. It's a bit like Pandemic Legacy or something like that.
Yeah.
You draw one of those cards and it will instruct you to do something that changes the random generation for the future.
Cool.
So some of them, like one of the ways you can lose a whole campaign is if you draw all of the legacy cards before you've beaten it. So some of them are just, you're running out of time and this doesn't do anything. It just, you've drawn that card's gone now. So, but sometimes it'll be like, okay, now take all of the encounter cards for Chaos Beastmen and shuffle them into the encounter deck.
Oh,
so
right.
like a new threat is in the deck now. So rather than it being like, you can't, outside of some of the encounters, you can't encounter certain enemies until you've done a couple of expeditions and drawn them into the deck, basically.
That's
it's
so smart.
so good.
That's so smart.
And then you get this kind of, great, then you have the stronghold missions, which are basically raids, which are pre-designed encounters that you have to spend clues that you find in normal expeditions to attempt.
Right.
And once you've done all 4 of them, then you can do the attempt on the final one. And that's what gets you access to the little envelope in the box.
Yeah, which is another nice Pandemic Legacy thing as well, isn't it? You're not supposed to look in there until you've actually finally released the game.
But yeah, it's genuinely like, I mean, we started off talking about the hobby side of it and it's a good box of models, but like, I'm kind of struck by, like, it's definitely, like, there's been so many good things this year, like, Underworlds is still great, Kill Team has been great, like, Kill Team is a really good value box, but this is like, this for me cements 40k as like, the game I want to encounter through these little side games more than almost like the big army game, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think we've got a question about that for later, but like, that's, you know, it's been such a kind of treat to like, go on this kind of, really consistent feeling, kind of engaging adventure with really clear rules and like interesting rules as well. Not just sort of, it's there to facilitate throwing some dice. It's like, it's genuinely quite high level strategic as well, which is awesome.
I love the idea that they've designed a proper campaign game as well. Yeah. Which is something that they've gestured at with stuff like, Firestorm, with a bunch of the boxes and, even stuff like Kill Team and its predecessor, like there have always been rules to make campaigns, but this feels like a game that's built entirely around almost roguelike running these dungeons over and over again and building a party through that process. It is, yeah. And it's also like, it's genuinely long. Like, right. I mean, we've done 2 quite successful runs and ended up with loads of clues and stuff. And then just like normal runs and then decided we were going to try one of the strongholds. And time is obviously, you know, you want to do that when you can because time is against you. Yeah. We drew one of the harder looking strongholds, but also when you drew that, you also, there's like, each stronghold has instructions for how to build the encounter deck. So you don't just go and do the stronghold. Yeah. You still have to do a certain number of layers of the dungeon normally. And this particular one called the Death Maze, which is hard. Promising. You have to do 4 encounters before you get to it. But unlike normal where you try and balance the number of combat encounters and like, text encounters, basically. You just shuffle the entire encounter deck and draw 4. And so it could be anything. Yeah, it could be like a load of Space Marines. yeah. Which is really tough. And like, we got, this is maybe the only downside to it is we got in a sort of roguelike style completely screwed by that random generation, basically. Yeah. Because the first thing on the top of the deck was an encounter, one of the kind of like special encounters, which is called Isolated. And the idea is that one of the explorers has been separated. And so you set up just one of the bigger tiles. So it's just one small room, and you place that one explorer in it. And then you have 3 enemy spawns. And they're randomly drawn. So it can be like you get a little bit lucky and it's like some modifiers, 2 spindle drones and a couple of Urgles and you're all right. But unfortunately I drew
the encounters for 8 traitor guardsmen, 6 traitor guardsmen,
God.
and 4 Urgles. So that is all of the traitor guardsmen. That's all 14. Yeah. And there were so many of them, they barely fit. And it was just, and then you randomly draw which explorer it is that's gotten lost as well. No. And I drew the Kroot tracker. And so it was just the Kroot against like a firing squad of 14 people, and Urgles rip you to pieces as well if they get close. Right. And they start really close.
Yeah.
Like, the Kroot tracker, he has an amazing ability, which I love, which is after you set up the board, but before initiative is drawn, he can do one free move and use his special ability once, which is to place a mine.
Oh, cool.
So at the start, normally it feels really cool because he's almost like always the first person sprinting out of the lift, and you almost agree this corridor, because the mine goes off when anyone steps on it.
Right.
But it's usually enough to kill a weak enemy, so.
You just lock it down.
Just like this corridor we're not going to worry about. You know, it's all Urgles down that way. So they'll come running down the corridor eventually and we'll just hold this line here.
Yeah.
Basically, like he synergizes really nicely with the Flamer Lady, because Flamer Lady can just keep firing Flamer.
Yeah.
Like she can just lay down these 2 tokens. That means she makes an attack against anyone who walks through the fire, basically. And that persists from when she acts until the next time she acts. So she just keeps flaming.
That down. Yeah.
And so you can do this like lockdown area stuff, but in that scenario, we just absolutely shafted.
Yeah.
And I took 4 grievous wounds, which means that he has a block on every single one of his activation things, which means he can only act by using destiny dice, which are the random dice.
Are they like a shared pool
That's
as well?
a shared pool.
Yeah.
And there's no way of healing that. You can only heal that by going back to Precipice.
Gotcha.
So we just went back to Precipice. Because it's like, because it's like we've got to do the hardest boss encounter in the game 4 encounters from now, and we've just effectively lost a person just on that draw.
Yeah.
Which, so that stings
it's a good story though.
a bit, but it's a good story.
Yeah.
And it might be that, you know, we just spent 4 of our clues for that. And one of our expeditions, and we got to draw another legacy card, and that's going to add complexity. So the whole thing slows, you know, that slows our rundown massively. It's like, it feels a lot like failing a mission in XCOM. You know, where you're like, oh shit, I'm behind the clock now.
Yeah. Got to catch up. You got to speed up or do something, get a good win next time round.
Yeah.
Like
So, and it could be that costs us the run, and this is taking like, you know, each of those expeditions took most of an afternoon.
Yeah.
And like, so it's kind of nuts how long it potentially is in order to beat it. Like, I don't think I'll beat it first time.
Has stakes then. Like,
yeah.
that makes it tense. That makes it, you know, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So, but we've both been painting those models. Like this has been I haven't had very much time for painting lately, but this has been a real treat doing those. And weirdly, for the first time I think in the history of Miniature Monthly, we've both been painting the same models.
We have in this, like pretty much the same order as well. Like, we both seem to have instinctively started with the same heroes.
Yeah, heroes wise, yeah. Cause I did the spindle drones and the Urgles.
I've not done them yet.
Cause they're really quick and easy.
They look pretty easy, yeah.
Basically one of them is like dry brushing and the other is glazes. And it's just, they're delicious. It's so easy.
They look great as well.
But yeah, we've both done the Kroot and we've both done the, Navigator, Esbern Lacano.
Yeah, and I finished the robot as well.
Oh, cool.
Which is, that's another awesome character. Could have been just a big dumb mech, but really cool backstory and stuff.
Yeah, really fun in the game as well.
Oh, good.
Cause his Inspire condition, which is a thing they've inherited from Shadespire, is, just to squeeze a robot to death. His Inspire condition has squeezed a spindle drone to death, basically.
Oh, wow.
That's all he wants to do. That's all he wants.
That's pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed, I'm trying to think if there's like something specifically I think one thing I found about, doing these is I've really enjoyed going, and I think you've done the same thing, going for the box color scheme. Like it feels like the art is so good. I don't really want to make my versions of these characters. Like
no.
I want to do those characters.
Yes, I agree with
and I find that really gratifying actually.
Yeah, same here. First thing I noticed was that they are on a different scale to what I'm used to painting. So I started with the Navigator, which I've already explained why I love the style of it. But compared to the Stormcast, they're like sort of 55% the size.
Yeah, he's very wee.
Very, very small. Lots of cool details. So I found that I was struggling a little bit with the scale almost, but not in a way that put me off at all. But I have asked for a kind of clamp-on magnifier tool for Christmas now, because like I realised that my eyesight's not that great anyway, and I actually probably do need a bit of extra if I'm going to be going to like painting proper 28mm scale models, because it's almost like sometimes the detail's so small, and if the colour is uniform or quite dark, it can be actually quite difficult to see where the raised areas are on such a small miniature, even with a good lamp. So, I've kind of been trying to work with that. But I don't think it's really affected it, because the model itself is quite well sectioned into different areas.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of purple on the robes. You've got a lot of nice gold, which I'm quite used to for, a lot of the chest plate and the helmet and stuff like that. And I really enjoy painting the floor. There's a very good Warhammer TV video about like how to paint the kind of lit streaks of kind of
The laser floor,
basically. And it looks great, and it's actually sets off the colours of the miniatures really well, because none of the colour schemes really use those colours precisely. So you get a really nice contrast between the base and the miniature. And
but I was going to ask you about basing. Have you done their system for filing it down?
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. How have you found that?
I found that to be not as good as the effects that they showed. I filed it like a lot, but it's still kind of rough. It looks fine. And once you've got the kind of hard coat and Lamium medium glaze on it, like that covers a multitude of sins. It also darkens down the black and stuff like that. Is a good thing to do at the end. But it's a weird way of doing it. Like, I think I might have rather have put some plasticard on.
That's what I've done.
So that's the way you did it.
Yeah.
It gives you that automatic smooth surface.
So so my basing method has been to, basically cut circles of plasticard and stick them on, and then cover the gaps with astrogranite to kind of have like stuff piled on top. And it's not a perfect effect, but it's, I like it. Because it's a completely smooth surface. There's some, and one thing it allows you to do is cover, because, one very retro thing about the Blackstone push-fit models is slotter bases.
Yeah.
And it allows you to, cover, the slotter gap quite nicely, or break up that line. Like I've seen a lot, like you can even see it, it's really obvious where the heavy metal team kind of cheated a bit with this stuff. Like, they obviously sawed away the slotter bases and completely rebased a lot of those models.
Yes.
But you can often see, even if you just put texture paint over the slotter line, it can be obvious where the line is. So I've done a lot to try and break up that line, so to kind of like create the illusion of it, particularly on the smaller like minion models, because just creating a little bit of variety in their bases with skulls and plasticard sort of visible in different places means that you forget that there's a really obvious line down the middle of the base.
Yeah. You can use the laser lines to really disrupt the symmetry of the base as well. So you can go like slightly crosswise to the model and then avoid that kind of, draw your eye away from that dissection across the center, horizontally. What I found as well is that, I've avoided putting the slotters in directly in the middle each time. Yeah. Just to avoid having a patch of astrogranite on each side. So some of them where it works, they're just fully off to one side. So there's just a bit of astrogranite on the other, and you don't get that uniform thing across the whole lot. I also bought a box of skulls. That box is brilliant.
It is a good box.
It's a really good box. I'm going to use it forever. And I've spliced up some sprue and use it to build kind of fallen girders and bricks and stuff like that. And if you chop the sprue down really small and also put some astrogranite in among it, among the kind of piles that you're creating, like it look organic, and again, that distracts.
Yeah. So the only thing I did differently for any of them was, for the navigator, I did saw away his slotter and mount him on a normal 32mm base. And I did that because, one, I wanted to base coat him grey and the base black. Right. But also I sprayed them differently. But also I wanted to do, I felt like it would be obvious if like every single character was conveniently, because the weakness of the plasticard system is you can't get it perfectly, cutting it so that it fits perfectly around the feet and other base details of a model is extremely hard, to the point of I can't be bothered. So it tends to be shards of visible, the laser floor is visible in glimpses through piles of debris. So I think I probably got less laser floor on average than doing the other method. But for the navigator particularly, I wanted more laser floor, basically. So I made him a base with much more plasticard on it. And then it was a little bit touch and go, because actually those slotter connections on some of the models are actually quite sort of substantial. So I had to really go at it with a saw to get him away from that. But I'm quite pleased with how that worked out. And I've done something with him that I'm going to reflect across all of the other particularly kind of like warp adjacent models, which is have the laser floor reacting to them, which
I've played with that as well, especially with him, because he has such like 3 points of contact, and particularly the staff, the cane that he has, he sort of like has this wonderful sort of imperious pose where he's just
not even resting on it. Yeah, he's just going for a little walk.
Like, go for a little walk. And I put extra glow around the base of that, as though he's channeling some sort of power and it's affecting the floor.
I've got little arcs of lightning coming out the base of the cane and and linking into the lasers. Like it's almost like but I kind of like the idea that it's not him doing it. It's more like the station reacting to him. Yeah. So like the rogue cycles will have something similar. And for the Chaos Lord, the laser floor is going to be almost entirely red. Like it's
that's
like
a cool
it's
idea.
changing underneath him.
I like that idea a lot. That's I might steal that. That's a really good idea.
And you know, so it's going to be like more like the threat level almost, just affecting the floor.
Oh no, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, you can have that idea, but like,
that's good. That's good.
Yeah, but because I got an idea for how I'm going to do it for all of them as well. But no, that's really nice. That's been really fun to do. The rest of the painting those models, like something I've discovered is, and this is a fun thing to discover after years as the magic nonsense man, is I really like just painting natural materials. And so like, and I'm now pretty happy with my techniques for lots of different kinds of, materials. So with the Kroot, I had an idea for how I wanted to do his skin. Like I wanted to give him like, mottled skin in places, like on his hands and his forehead, which was done with glazes over, multiple glazes over a kind of a base and freehand and stuff. And then, but with his leathers, I wanted it to feel like leather. And I've had mixed success in the past with painting like the scratches and things for leather. So a technique I figured out for that was actually, like after doing the base coat, doing like a light dry brush, like a scratchy dry brush and then manual highlighting over that because it almost gives you a guide and it worked quite nicely.
Yeah.
And then for, I was pleased with how the cape and stuff came out for the Navigator because I really wanted that to look like velvet, like that's much smoother. And I found the way of doing that I was happiest with actually involves foremost very rarely for me, no washes at all, like not actually doing a shade.
Yeah.
And painting it by starting with a mid-tone rather than darkest and working up, starting with a mid-tone and then, I suppose making glazes, but like making blends with Army Medium and the darker color and like painting the shadows in basically.
Right.
And
so
then,
would it been, is it Xerius purple?
It's basically,
mid-tone?
the mid-tone for me is Xerius purple and then Nagaroth, but like very thin and then just painting it only into the shadows. Right. And I've got a photo of him on my Instagram from the back, but it was much easier for me to do it almost manually to like, rather than see where the wash settles. It's almost like just, I'm going to sort of decide where the shadows are because, and follow natural light where I can. And it worked quite nicely. Like, and then going up to quite a bright wink gives that sense of it being.
Yeah. Nice. Lovely.
Makes the Navigator ass shine.
Lovely purple robes. It's very good. I've really enjoyed just the sheer variety of colour palettes across the hero models I've painted so far. So painting, what's his name? The robot is UR025 or something like that?
UR025.
Yeah. And that was such a counterintuitive method for me because I followed, there's the sort of heavy metal, paint scheme is written on the instructions and it's actually wrong.
Yeah.
And I adapted it, like cross-referenced it with the Warhammer TV video of how they did it. And it's turned out pretty well actually, like for mashing those two things together. And it's quite counterintuitive because you start with, the Ideneth flesh base tone, which is, to me, looks like, it's not warm, but it's not the blue, grey, cold scheme that you see.
Yeah, it's quite green.
Robot.
Like,
yeah. But then washing that with Lilac Oxide and Larmium Medium just is transformative and suddenly it changes the tone of the entire colour. And then going over that, then you get to start dry brushing and it looks completely great dry brushing on that model because he's an ancient robot and just the slightly kind of peppery style of that.
Peppery is a good word for it actually.
It is like, it really fits into that. It ages it a little bit as well. And then, I went back over like Ryclan Flesh Shade. It's like, again, all these tones just, they should clash and be weird, but it looks like rust. It looks like wear. And then just, mix some Rhinox Hide with some Larmium Medium. And then I did like, like low light isn't even the word for it, but like almost just tracing around the armor plates and the cracks and the little divots and the little kind of, raised areas, and just kind of creating as much contrast as possible. And it looks fucking great. And it was so easy. Like, honestly, none of those, those techniques might sound more advanced than they are, but it was entirely just a lot of coats of this pale color to make sure it was really clean and consistent. Then it was just washes, and then the hardest part was doing sort of that ultra low light, and you can let the brush do all the work because the sculpt is so defined because it's like a robot, and the sculpt is excellent anyway. You can just like let the brush just kind of go into those cracks as you move it around, and the effect has been awesome. It's been so much fun to paint.
Yeah, rad. Looking forward to that. At the moment, I'm sort of set, because I have a bunch of stuff base coated for my Zinch army, and I was all in on that, and I've decided I really want to finish Blackstone. Like, I want to get through the whole box. I'm glad I played without painting everything, but it's nice to, like, every time we play to have more stuff painted. Yeah. And the way I'm rationing it is I'm doing a unit of enemies, then a hero, then a unit of enemies, then a hero, just to keep the momentum going. So I'm just in the process now of, I've just finished cleaning them up, and I'm about to start building the bases for all of the Traitor Guard. Right. Because there's 14 of them. They're by far the most.
That's the biggest job, isn't it?
Like, I don't think they're going to be that hard to paint. But, I don't want to, but they're not going to be as speed paintable as the ghouls and the drone. Yeah. So it's going to be a chunk of time. Like, it's going to slow things down for me, but when they're done, the rest of the box feels so much more achievable. Like, even now, just having separated them out, you realize they account for a big proportion of the contents of that box. Yeah. So getting them done, I think, will be a real big sort of momentum boost. And then after that, into probably the robot.
Yeah, I bet the Dark Mechanicus aren't too hard either.
I don't think so, although they're fiddly. Like, to the extent that I'm thinking of spraying them lead belcher and painting the flesh and the cloth in, because there's so much metal in little corners that I'd almost rather spray the metal, wash and dry brush the metal, then worry about everything else. Yeah. Because, you can't, like, if you miss a dendrite, you'll feel it, you know what I mean? Like, cause and you don't want to be like stabbing a brush covered in lead belcher down into a crevice to try and get into those little bits.
You can't, it's so hard to fix skin tone once all the washes and the highlights are on as well, because it should be like quite a gradient, and it should be quite a shifting palette. So just a big blob of silver on there is not easily corrected. Like,
no.
Yeah. That's wise.
So that's what I'm thinking for them. And then everything else is just as it happens. Like, I think I'll paint the Chaos Lord off his base, because his pose is a little tricky because he's holding his hammer in front of himself. In fact, although his arms come off really easily, so it might be worth painting without his arms.
Okay. That's a good shot.
Yeah, and actually the way the bolters connect to the front of the Chaos Space Marines, where they literally just plug into their hands, is like a kind of...
Oh yeah, in that case
it's an open invitation to paint the bolters separately.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, like, it's such a good set. And actually, I think, one of the things that put me off, like Wrath and Rapture a little bit is that, Wrath and Rapture is a £95 box, the same as Blackstone. And the relative value proposition between those two things. Obviously, one of them is basically the equivalent of 2 stock collecting boxes and a £5 discount. But honestly, like, Blackstone is definitely a premium product.
It's a true premium.
It's a £95 game, but it really feels worthwhile. Like, it almost makes me slightly annoyed that my shame pile elsewhere is so big. It's like, Yeah,
it's interesting that sense of value doesn't come purely from model count. It's the fancy of it, and the quality of the actual not scenery, but like the game board, the assembly game board is so high, and the sheer number of cards and gubbins and dice and rules that you get with it all adds like a variety of value. It's almost like to use a word that's some of our friends say, smorgasbord of
it's a platter of cold meats.
A different type of but there's lots of different flavors of hobby in one box, whereas it feels with like a traditional army set, you're getting one thing, aren't you, really? Yeah,
and I think also the thing that's great about it is it feels like something that's quite easy to share with people. Like, it's a game you can get out. Like, it's a little technical. Like, it takes a while to explain it, although I feel like now I've played it a bunch, I could explain it quickly. Yeah. But like, it feels like a game I can play with a variety of people. So the investment in painting it, for example, pays off in lots of different ways, which is not to say that, it's a very different thing to painting an army. But, you know, there's definitely some sense of like really worthwhile self-contained kind of experience in a box. Yeah, it's great. I'm really taken with it. Like I've got a lot on my painting plate at the moment, which is one of the reasons that I really do. And I'm saying this now so that I can be wrong next month when something happens. But I really do, I think, want to spend the early part of next year just painting and playing with the stuff I've got rather than starting new projects.
Yeah.
I think.
That's always wise.
There's a few things that are making that harder.
Do you want an Ideneth army?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Dark Earth is probably coming, and I like the book that I read, the Dark Earth novella.
Oh, yeah.
I liked it. It's good. It's basically people being reasonable to each other. Well, no, I mean, no, there's a lot of eye gouging and decapitating, but like,
Yes.
by Warhammer standards, there's even a relatively reasonable Stormcast in it.
Wow, shit.
There's like a Lord Ordinator basically just says like, you're less chaosy than most of the rest of them. You can go.
You're all right.
Yeah, you're all right, really.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's, I like the idea of that army. It heavily implies that a big thing will be giant dogs pulling chariots for the Dark Oath, which, yep, I do like. All dogs are good in Age of Sigmar. It's a good rule.
Yeah. That's the other thing I painted, actually. I painted a lovely box of doggos.
Dogs, yeah, they're good, aren't they?
They're
all good.
They're all good, especially the weird Age of Sigmar ones. So at live events, and the last sort of like 5 minutes of the day before it closed, I just went and bought a box of Griffhounds. And, that, in terms of just hobby fun for buck, has been the best thing I've bought in the hobby, because it's like 13 quid and you get 6 of them, and you can paint them whatever colour you want, and you can just experiment, go wild, just try anything on them. And, they were super quick and super fun to paint up, and they look rad as well. The sculpts are really nice.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did buy a, we'll get to this, but like, so playing our big game of Adeptus Titanicus at the meetup did make me realize I do want to get into Adeptus Titanicus. That is on the horizon, but I managed to stave that off by buying a Reaver Titan that I was sort of midway through building and customizing and things by the time, Blackstone came out.
Right.
So that is on the back burner a little bit, because I'm doing some scenic based stuff that's quite ambitious.
Nice.
Hopefully that'll be cool. But yeah, I've come away from a lot of that stuff really just wanting to knuckle down and get stuff finished. I think, you know, like I realize, like I've got all the stuff I need to get to 1,000 points with Khorne in Age of Sigmar, and I want to play a bunch of games with that.
Yeah,
like, and just
really
have some different kinds of games.
A different army, yeah.
And I've realized, I think that like, as good a value as the Battle Force boxes are, that stuff will always be there. Like maybe not in those particular combinations, but like,
yeah. It's
not your only opportunity to, you know, the discount can be a little misleading in some ways, or it can feel like a sort of, oh, this is the time to get on board the Seraphim bus because that is such a good value box, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Plus, like, there's value in customizing your selection for stuff like Ideneth. Like, if there was a Mathlan, like a aspect of Mathlan in there, that I would think about it, but it's the kind of a lot of infantry and a couple of sharks and a lot of eels. And the really kind of the stuff, the highfalutin stuff in that range that I love isn't in there.
Yeah.
And I'd rather spend more and have the things I really want.
Yeah, I can understand. I mean, it's still a very good value box.
It's a great value box.
But like, and it's about an 800 point army. Like most of them are bordering on 1,000 points.
And it's a good army as well. Like the eels are legit. They're really, really strong.
Yeah. The other thing that's happened is, so very, very kindly, my friend who I've been playing, Blackstone with has, given me a copy of the Lord of the Rings Battle of Penelor Fields box that he doesn't want.
Cool.
So, I have that now.
Oh, can I play that with you?
Yes. Like,
love to play that
it's not
system.
built. But I, you know, I think a couple of episodes ago, or maybe just one episode ago, based on how many we missed, I said that I was really tempted by that. I recently rewatched all the movies and I just really wanted to paint some Saxons. I mean, Rohirrim. And so I'm not going to treat them as those models are really interesting actually, because they are, in some ways, obviously of a lower quality. They remind me much more of my plastic Bretonians from the late 90s. Yeah. They're nice, but they're not like, they're small by, you know,
tiny, aren't they?
by scale creep standards. And in some ways that makes them feel a lot less, sort of unforgiving as a hobby challenge. Like they will take an all over Agrax wash really nicely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get that painted up at some point. Like, that's a thing as well. So it feels like without me kind of making too many big plans for the future, I've ended up with plenty to do. How about you? How do you feel about because you have maintained a very low shame pile for a long time now.
Yeah. What I've realised in the last couple of months is that I'm really bored of painting gold for a while.
Right.
So I've got actually a whole second starter box bunch of Stormcast that I could turn into a really formidable Stormcast, like a Sacrosanct Chamber army. And Jim, as a little birthday gift, bought me a mini box of Sequitors that basically rounds out that you get absurd numbers in the starter box, but I could now paint up 20 Sequitors and 10 Evocators as well. And that is a really strong core for a new Stormcast army. But that feels like something that I want to be 6 to 8 months away. Because what I've really enjoyed about Blackstone is different colours, different textures, and also smaller models, more detailed models. Cause Stormcast are kind of easy mode in a lot of ways by design. They're designed for people to get into them and just be able to paint them, wash them, they look great. And it's hard to bring extra kind of panache to them. You don't see Stormcast models often winning Golden Demon stuff, with the exception of there's an incredible Palador units.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Which we saw actually when we went to Warhammer Fest. And I'm sure that won something. And the Palador kit you can put a lot of time into that. And that's probably, along with the Hunters, my favourite Stormcast unit, sculpt-wise. But as a range, I've grown a little bit bored of them. And Blackstone has kind of made me bored of them because suddenly I'm painting with all these exciting new colours and new techniques and putting lots of different things into the models. So my next project is going to be finishing Blackstone and then moving on to a kill team, an AdMech kill team, and kind of come up with a colour scheme for that. And again, that's a lot of interesting, cool, contrasts of, texture and colour, because you've got obviously the metallic elements right next to these cloth and leather elements and things like that. I really want to kind of experiment with that and get them looking rad.
Yeah, awesome.
And, I can completely see myself building that into an army because I've got a bunch of AdMech, from here and there. I love the Castellan robot models. They're some of my favourite 40k models, and I could just totally see myself buying 2 boxes of them and a sort of a tech priest to go with them, and that would be an amazing hobby project. So that's kind of what I want to do in the next sort of 6-7 months, is actually knuckle down and play some kill team, paint some kill team, and do some Blackstone Fortress, and actually sort of shift into 40k for a little while.
Cool.
Dip into that universe.
Yeah, because there's always AOS to play, right?
And there will be an AOS release. They always release Stormcast at some point during the year that will probably draw me back in, or it will be a different army, or it might be new elves or something like that it will draw me back in. But I'm waiting for that to happen in the long term. I feel like it'll be late next year. I'll probably do some new AOS. Until then, I'm kind of happy to be
that makes
40k.
sense. That's cool.
And I love the idea of actually trying out Lord of the Rings. And if I like that, perfectly happy to buy a little army, skirmish Lord of the Rings stuff.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of just painting different stuff for a bit. Again, I often wonder, should I just try stuff from other systems? But because, as we discussed before, all of Games Workshop's models feed into different systems in a way that I could field a bunch of, stuff in my AdMech army from the, Blackstone Fortress box. I could put the Navigator in there probably if you wanted to do it. And I like that idea. And if I was to go off and paint something from a completely different range, it would be tricky to kind of integrate it into the rest of the hobby. But yeah, no clear plans, but apart from the clear plan I just outlined. I was tempted by, Adeptus Titanicus though, when I saw that mega game. Those models are fucking cool.
Yeah, I think if there is a re-release of the Grandmaster Edition, which was rumoured, like a reprint,
right,
then I would probably buy it. I think. They are selling a big sort of battle box, almost a battle force for Adeptus Titanicus, but you still have to buy the rules and stuff separately.
Right.
The other thing that I was tempted by is the new Necromunda Delac miniatures.
Oh, they're nice.
These are ways of tricking me into buying more models, is if someone nearby sets up a Necromunda League, and it's it's only 1 box. And 2 rule books. And some dice probably, because you need them, obviously.
They're some of my favourite Necromunda models so far.
They're really good. Yeah. They're really good. I want to dry brush the snake spy men. Very good. They're very good. But yeah, so there's always stuff lurking at the corner, but it's been, I think I having been, one thing I've noticed is having been seriously busy for a couple of months, I've still managed to get some painting time here and there, but what I haven't done is like, just sort of like taken stock of everything I've got either on the go or like just lying around. Like X-Wing 2nd edition came out and I've hardly had time to play it.
Oh yeah.
And so like, I'm spending a lot of my hobby time at the moment just like picking a game system and tidying my stuff in that system, like sleeving cards and sorting the cards and getting stuff into a storage solution that makes sense. Cause I mean, I've had stuff out on the side in my office in here for months because I just haven't had time to like figure out what I want to do with stuff. And sometimes I think I might be approaching another purge, like just downscaling in some ways. But also I just kind of want to like get back to that feeling of like a clear painting table with only the things I want to be painting on it rather than like half projects. Like I've got too many half projects and I think I really want to do that big clean out in order to just feel on top of it all.
Yeah, I've still got like a bunch of like AOS scenery that I've got half built that I want to finish. And I guess you've got some Kill Team scenery and stuff like that as well.
Loads of Kill Team terrain. Like it's one of those things I think that's really easy to do when hobbies are an outlet is like, you start like, I think one thing that's happened to me recently personally is like, I've had the disposable income, but not the time. So sometimes just like getting into something like Warhammer Champions, the card game or something like that is an outlet for my interest in trying new game systems and things. But that stuff can sort of spiral if you don't have the discipline to like keep hold of your shame pile, that kind of thing. Like you see it happen. I think every hobby person experiences this where it's like, I started an extra project because I kind of just wanted to, but now I don't really know why I did that. You know what I mean? That kind of feeling like
it's variety. I think like they're doing something new is very exciting. And then
it's much easier to buy the army than it is to paint it. Yeah. And the window shopping pull is very, very strong.
Yeah.
And, obviously that's how they get you. That is how one is got.
Yeah. The biggest danger for me would be just buying an Adeptus Titanicus Titan as a one-off hobby project, which is something I'd really want to do. Cause
I've done that now.
But I think like, I think you were saying this, that the idea that you could just buy one Titan and bring one to each miniatures monthly event that might happen. And then eventually you'd end up with a mana pool that, you know, you could just play the full game.
Yeah.
And I really like that idea of just kind of, just slowly lowering yourself into that very expensive bath.
Which is the experience of this last couple of years as a whole, to be honest.
That's very true.
But yeah, like I think taking stock is an important thing. And like, cause there's things like I really do want to do Necron army. Like I really like Necrons.
Yeah.
They're fun, but it's like, let's actually do that. Like, you know, I haven't painted the Star Wars Legion box. That's a game I like and like a little bit more of. I don't like the feeling that I have more toys than I play with as a 31-year-old man. And getting back on top of that, there's lots of things I've had on my mind. I want to rebase all of my 30k Thousand Suns.
Right.
I decided because I want them to be more prosperous.
Yeah. That's, why?
Because I want them to be more Prospero-y.
Oh, I see.
I think I did them on kind of like blue.
Dark blue, right.
Because it suited the tiles in the Burning of Prospero game.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of want to do a display board for them so they have a home.
Maybe.
Yeah. Do something a bit new. It's not going to be that hard because it's only super glued onto those bases anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's like, but that's like a couple of weeks of work that I will make time for at some point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there's all these compelling reasons not to put on the brakes somewhat, which shouldn't be taken as a bad news for the podcast. I should stress.
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
And this is me just detaching from the entire thing. But nonetheless, I've definitely had that feeling lately of being really enjoying the snatches of time I've had to enjoy it, but also feeling a bit overwhelmed by almost quote unquote falling behind by not keeping up the pace.
Yeah, I'm lucky in the sense that the only thing I've really fallen behind on is Shadespire, and that's not such an enormous thing to lose. And almost everything else has just been AOS.
Yeah.
I've just focused on AOS so much that, but it sounds like I'm about to get into that problem as I go into several other systems at the same time next year.
Yeah, but also there are more fruitful ways of painting a few models and being ready. Like, you know,
that's what Blackstone's so good for. Like, that's what I love about it is that it chunks so easily depending on the amount of time that you have to spend on a given weekend or, you know, a given week. So I've basically the last weekend done a hero model a day, and that has been so much fun. Just putting all the effort into one hero, bosh, finished, put it on the side, photograph it, put it on Instagram, and then move on to the next one. And then as I'm doing that one, I'm thinking about the next one. So I finished the robot like the other night, and then started on the Rogue Trader, and that's just going really nicely. And it's the best sort of manufacturing line, really, rather than just doing massive units of just gold. It's just every one of these characters is a different fantasy. It's a different color scheme. It's a different color set, different textures. And I love that variety. And that's why I want to take on lots of small projects like a Titan, like a kill team, or, a unit. In between those, I might do a Stormcast unit just to go back to my guys,
Yeah, I think that's the thing. One of the things, and this will maybe segue into what we'll get into soon, but one of the things that struck me, like, when we first got to Cardiff for the start of our event, we were at Firestorm and, we got there kind of 10 in the morning and people were trickling in, and you and I basically set up on the giant table we were going to use for our mega game, which we'll discuss momentarily, I imagine. And we both got like, the whole point of that game was this: for the first time, we will throw our entire armies at each other.
Yeah.
And obviously I have seen all of your models and you've seen all of my models, but we've never had them all out at the same time, like facing each other. And it was nuts. It's like,
oh my God.
there was a part of it for me, which I was actually really kind of almost thrilled by, which is that like teen me was appalling at changing projects all the time. And also didn't really have any money. So I was always like buying one thing from an army, painting that and then doing something else. And probably never really playing any games because the idea of a 2,000 point army was a madman's dream.
More than like beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then us sitting there ahead of an 8,000 point game, like 4,000 point fully painted, fully based armies. I was like, holy shit, I did that. Like, I actually painted all of this.
Yeah. It's like, this is what 2 years of hobby looks like. All just put on the same table. And that was slightly terrifying, but also, like, I felt really proud and really excited just to watch them smash each other up.
Yeah, and some of them not doing anything at all. Just hanging around the corner.
And some of them I would just forget. I just left in space.
But that was the thing. It was like that moment of like, holy shit, like, I have drawn every like tiny bit of paint on all of these models. I did, which is a weird thing to think, and it's not supposed to be self-aggrandizing. It's just like I don't remember. Like it's just it's such a vast expenditure of effort, for a cool thing. But you know what I mean? It's like holy shit! Like just seeing the time, it's like Christ Almighty. No wonder people don't do this.
Hundreds of hours. Just
no wonder people play with grey plastic
on this table. It was amazing though. The whole event was amazing.
Yeah. Yes. Good beer crack sound effect.
Thought it'd open a new section.
Yeah, we should talk about the event.
We should. Had a really good time.
Yeah.
In fact, it kind of defined a lot of things about AOS for me on a grand scale.
Yeah. So we should talk about how to approach this, because I think, so to clarify, so this month there will not be a battle report in the traditional sense, because our campaign has come to a conclusion with the battle that we played. And obviously we appreciate that, 40 of our community were there in Cardiff.
Yeah.
But a lot of people won't know exactly what we did. And so in some ways we can obviously do a little bit of a blow by blow of what happened in the game, sort of. But I think partly we kind of need to explain what it was.
Yeah, for sure.
And also I agree, like I don't know if you want to get into this first or afterwards, but I want to talk about the way I walked away with a different attitude towards AOS as well.
It taught me, I definitely learned things about the game. Maybe we can conclude with.
Maybe, I think that's probably right. So basically the weekend as a whole was basically just open play, people playing whatever they wanted from, Shadespire and Kill Team, Adeptus Satanicus, lots of Age of Sigmar. But we also, asked if people wanted to take part in a narrative game. And I, I was pretty keen that it was like one massive game rather than a campaign. And it was kind of both of our first experience of like trying to do something like this at this scale.
Yeah.
And I think it was, and this is maybe linked at the end, it was only possible because everyone sort of bought into the idea. Like, I think running a narrative game like this worked because of the nature of the community that was taking part. I couldn't imagine selling tickets to strangers for an event like this.
Sure.
Now, obviously, I was meeting a lot of people for the first time, but it wasn't like there was a real degree of flexibility in terms of how people were willing to play, and embracing the idea of narrative play. But basically the idea, was this, and I'm going to try and summarize it. So, obviously the campaign games that we've played in the podcast to this point describe the kind of re-emergence of my Tzeentchian cult in this island, and this sort of like island continent in the realm of metal, where in the hundreds of years since, last year's campaign, Tom's Stormcast have established a foothold. New forces are on the rise, return of this demon legion alongside a big new mortal Zangor contingent. But it turns out that all of these assaults that have been taking place in cities that have been under siege is a bit of a feint, as Tzeentch goes for the real prize, which is this, enormous spire in the mountains called the Clarion Spire. The first horn, that word for horn has been coming up a lot recently.
Yeah.
The idea being it's a tremendous, like a huge kind of ancient, sort of arcane, device that may or may not be a very big trumpet, that when honked, but in a Warhammer way, has the power to change the sort of, resonant frequency of every realm gate in the region. So potentially conferring sort of vast power to, whoever manages to do the big honk. And this was, so our game, you and me, was basically just a custom scenario where our armies started across the table from each other on a 12 by 4 table, with the spire in the center. And we had a rule which was, each of us had 3 objectives on each side and the spire in the center. And, if you got a hero to the spire, they could start channeling. If they could successfully channel it, they would contribute like their faction's energy to the spire based on how many objectives were being held elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the only way for someone to win in one turn was to capture every single objective and also channel the spire. Otherwise it was like a tug of war, basically.
Yeah. So you retain the points that you had in previous turns.
Yeah, you like bank
push
them.
back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and then if I bank points after you've banked points, I remove your points first.
Yeah.
And we have to get to 9 because that was the magic number for Tzeentch.
Tzeentch.
Because I wrote that, so I was like 9. And so that was our game, and it was basically designed in a way that meant that it was not going to be very possible for us to end that game off the bat. And the idea was that through various kind of deliberate and accidental sort of interweavings of fate, that battle was interconnected with other battles taking place elsewhere in the realms, like not just the realm of metal, but like across sort of time and space. And that the purpose of the afternoon of play for everybody was to almost like simulate this great big game of fate resolving across loads of different battlefields at the same time.
Yeah.
And so the principle, and so I didn't know how many games we'd end up having. We ended up with, 11 games of Age of Sigmar, plus a game of Silver Tower, plus Skirmish.
Skirmish, so wasn't there? Yeah.
I think 27 players total, all playing at the same time.
Across all Grand Alliances as well.
All Grand Alliances. And so there's a bunch of different things to this. So, and also different scales of games from 1,000 points up to 2,000 point games. And every game had some relationship with the central game. Either, like we've had battle reports from almost everybody who took part, which is great. And I'll run through some of them. Obviously, I guess I have to say straight up, thank you so much everybody who sent in pictures or put pictures in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
For the purposes of this battle report, I don't know how we'd handle telling every story. So we might not get to everything, but basically, so we had, for example, because of the particular composition of the armies that were brought, Tom, you had a system whereby you got a pretty substantial amount of reinforcement points reflecting Stormcast being reforged.
Yes.
Every single turn. To such an extent that you would basically be impossible to table. And that was based on the fate of a Stormkeep that was, unfortunately, quote, good for me, being sieged by an Orc War at the time. And that Orc War was simulated across 3 games. And so we had 3,000 point games, 3 Iron Jaws players in a row.
Yeah.
And then 3,
it was 2 Stormcast and a Nightwater.
It was Stormcast, Carriage and Nighthaunt.
That's right.
Like death in that case, defending this, fortress. And the outcome of that game was if the Stormcast can hold the line, you keep your reinforcement points.
Yes.
If the Orcs win, which they all did, including, I think, one spectacular moment when make sure I get the names correct. I think it was Nielsen's, Caradron, like, gun hauler dropped all of its bombs on a single shaman, or like grot shaman, and had them all miss.
The luckiest shaman.
That destruction did extremely well on those tables. And that had the effect of when those games, and we timed it so that the effect of a game on our game would be timed based on the expected length of that game. So when they all started to end, the all of the wars went well, basically.
Yeah.
That meant that, I think one of them didn't. I think one of them lost.
I think one of, it might have been, a goblin army that lost. I can't remember.
No, the Goblin Army won. We'll figure it out. Basically,
Maybe
that had the effect of about midway through our game shutting off your reinforcements to a huge extent.
Yeah.
But there was another mechanic, for example, whereby I gained fate points, which is what Tzeentch uses to summon demons, from every single table, rather than just ours. So whenever any wizard anywhere cast a spell, I got a fate point, and people had to come over to our table and take a dice that we were using as tokens and put them on a tray. And that was my tray of fate points.
Yeah.
And the fate of that system, the fate of fate, was decided by a mega battle taking place, between, Drew's Tzeentch led by Archaon and, Dines', Seraphon. So there was almost like a battle in the heavens kind of happening.
It felt like that battle was probably more important than our battle.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
it was. For the fate of the world, yeah. It's like,
yeah.
I wanted that sense that like our battle was important, but there were other things going on that were sort of
Beyond
affecting everything.
Our Ken, basically.
Yeah.
Like, the Archaon would be facing these, forces of order demons in a battle for everything.
Yeah, and then we had another one which was a Tzeentch army. James's Tzeentch army, I think, a sort of a cult uprising facing more Seraphon. So Seraphon kind of acting on the fringes to shut down chaos.
Which is absolutely 100% Seraphon. That's what they're all about. It's the whole deal.
So excuse me while I think about sneezing a lot and don't sneeze. Anyway, so I think that was James's Tzeentch versus Ewan's Seraphon. Where like again a huge smash up where like it basically just came down to a Slan chopping a Herald of Tzeentch in half and then just like summoning laser dinosaurs until all the demons were dead.
Fantastic.
I think both Seraphon armies won.
Yeah.
We had and then we had like really good and then we had two games on different boards that dictated whether or not you or I would get our auxiliaries. So you had a Sylvaneth army to the side, and I had a Khorne army to the side. Yeah. I got mine. You didn't get yours.
I didn't.
And that was thanks to Chris's Beastmen overcoming Rich's Beast Claw Raiders, who were just in the beast off, the big beastorama.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, who was it? It was, I think Tom's Death beat Nick's Stormcast to deny you your Realm of Death Sylvaneth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Because they were trying to get the Realm Gate open
They were trying
to
find the realm roots in the Realm of Death. And they were denied.
And then we had, one thing that we set up was, win conditions for the other Grand Alliances. So the win condition for Order was you winning. The win condition for Chaos was me winning. The win condition for Destruction, we changed on the fly because we had to make some adjustments because I think with something like this, the thing that's really helpful is the thing that's great about not having to like pre-publish an event pack or something was just being able to go, we don't think this is working 100% right. So what we did with Destruction in the end was, our game spilled over to a second day. We finished it in the morning of the Sunday.
Yeah.
And, we could do that, which was great because it's a really great venue and they let us leave things set up in a secure way, which was amazing. But also it would end with, a destruction army arriving on our battlefield. But the size of that army and how many points they had and what it was composed of would depend on the results of all these other games.
Yeah.
So in large part, it was assisted, by, the game between, Bean's Death and, Peanut Butterbug's, Moon Clan, where,
that's a good one.
Where basically just like grot fanatics and squigs ate skeletons for an hour.
Superb.
Which ended up contributing in a unit we'll get to, which is a very important Doom Diver.
There are so many kind of, all of, as we go through all these games, so many of them contributed vital moments to the main game, and we'll illuminate them eventually, but I just kind of...
Yeah, like I want to kind of like give people a map of what was going on,
Precisely.
even as hard as it is to hold in your head.
Yes.
Just so that we can then talk about specific things.
Yes.
Death's, win condition,
so good.
was so good. Basically, so, Chimp brought Nagash.
You did.
And, I want to give a shout out to Rogue Michael from Discord for cause Chimp is a competitive player, and that's not a bad thing, but there was an element of like, you're a competitive player and you've got Nagash. Which other lovely person here wants to get murdered by the god of death? And
that game was super good though.
it was super good.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Played out.
So the idea was Nagash was in his own game. And if he can win that game against Stormcast defenders, he gets to go through a realm gate and come to our game. And if he can get to the big horn and toot it, then the game's over.
Yeah, Nagash wins.
Nagash wins. Which was intended partly to create in a situation where maybe you and I work together, because Nagash is really scary. And spoilers, Nagash did make it to
eventually.
Eventually.
He's a slow boy, but
he was a slow boy. But, not before, I think one of the silliest games, but a great game of Nagash just hunting and killing Griffhounds.
And just trying to deny him. And it was great. We got to wander around and kind of like get a sense of all the games as the event was progressing. And, I saw a unit of 40 skeletons fighting every single unit in the Stormcast army, apart from some birds and dogs who were taking on Nagash, the Lord of the Undead. And it was a really fun game.
I really wish I could go through everybody.
There were so many good moments.
The other game that we have to mention, because it's going to be important, and it's my favorite.
I know the one you're going to talk about.
It's my favorite scenario. So in most of these cases, what we did was say, here's a match play scenario, play this, and this is the theme.
Yeah.
You know, play this in whatever way feels appropriate to you and your opponent, but here's the theme of the game, and here's the stakes. Here are the stakes. Here's the consequences. But for this one, we did create a custom scenario. So, Pete Fee, from Discord, brought his Skaven. And because of the numbers involved, we had to do 2v1 game. So this was a 2v1 game against, Laura's Fireslayers and Alex's Stormcast. And we did a game that was set underground beneath the main battle.
Yes.
Where their board was divided into quadrants. And even though their table was smaller, with the quadrants mapped onto quadrants on our board.
Yeah.
And each quadrant, a sextant, I guess, because there were 6 of them, had a column in the middle of it. And we did the columns a bit like the wards in the last game where we played prior to this. The Mind Sorcery would destroy the wards thing. Not that you could destroy the columns, but if you did a certain amount of damage to the columns, you could treat them as a unit, you could do damage to them. If you did that amount of damage, then the ground above collapsed. And on a natural, and then you rolled a d6, and on a 6, quadrant next to it would collapse as well. Create these kind of cave-ins. And that meant in our board, when that happened, every unit, when that happened, every unit standing in that quadrant took d6 mortal wounds and extra mortal wounds if it was a unit above a certain size. Unless they had the fly keyword, where on a 4-5-6, they stayed where they were. And on a 1-2-3, they went down to the other game.
Yeah.
And they fell through the ground and ended up in the other game. And so that, I don't want to spoil some things about the actual outcome, but I was that completes the map of what was going on.
Yes.
And the reason this was rad is partly because everyone's buy-in, but also because it meant that you and I, we actually, people were worried about obviously how long it was going to take us to play our game, but we motored through that game.
Yeah,
we were on round 5 while some of the 1,000-point games were still resolving their third turn.
I don't quite know how that happened.
I think, you and I know our armies really well.
That's true.
That was and it was we're just going to do this, this, and this. Yeah. But it's also partly that we knew that to some extent the outcome of the showcase game was so dependent on everyone else that you and I didn't have to make finicky little decisions. You know what I mean? We didn't have to be min-maxing every possibility or and I don't want to go too far ahead because I think this is really kind of the attitude I walked away with, but we could just do what kind of felt right or looked cool rather than, trying to win. In a huge way. Obviously we both had ideas of how to win, but it wasn't when piling in and stuff, it didn't really felt like it mattered if every pile in was 100% optimal to get the most bases in contact and,
just eyeball it, they're in, they're not.
Close enough, yeah.
Close enough.
I think in the interests of sanity, I don't think we can do a turn-by-turn run through our game. Also partly because it was a month ago.
I think the thing to do is highlight great moments from that game. And also, perhaps if we can in order, the key moments that affected our game from the other tables.
Right, yeah. So, it opened with, we're not going to bother going with like who had turn order and when, because it's just a huge thing.
It's just so big.
But basically like, yeah, it's just a big, like, multi-flank mashup, basically. But one thing that happened that was a big kind of game changer for me early on is I got, my army's faster than yours, basically, and I got to the horn fastest. I got the Zangor Shaman there straight away. And one thing you had done is the thing that you do a lot, which is you formed the like Stormcast defensive box. It was like your central section of the battlefield looking at me. I could get to your flanks and things. I wanted to draw you away to the flanks, but you built like a huge box of death, basically like facing that central area with a lot of ranged firepower.
Yeah. So I had the long strikes, and because we were just throwing everything down, a lot of things that normally quite high price in smaller games are just there, and they suddenly get to do what they do and be very effective at it. I also had the Knight Venator, who's the kind of winged archer expert, and they were all in kind of a central position, and the Secretors were in front of them, and they had some heroes around that could buff them and stuff like that. It was just quite I just wanted a big meaty brick that would be very difficult for you to dismantle.
I was literally like looking at Fee significantly and looking at that section of the board and then looking at his warp lightning cannons and then looking at the column that would collapse that section of the board and then looking at Fee and then looking at like, please break that.
Yeah, for sure. That's the weakness of concentrating your forces in our crazy multi-faceted scenario. And like when I was going around the tables and just kind of like saying hello to people and seeing people's games, I took particular interest in that table underground because how's the health on the pillar there? Like any interest in collapsing that? No? Okay, good. And just kind of like just taking the temperature. Not too much because it didn't end up surprising me, but yes, that was a constant like tactical bit of intrigue.
And so we had a sort of a cagey start. Like I basically wanted to bog you down in the middle with Zangor, which was successful. Actually, they were really good.
They're good,
but the long strikes were horrifying. They killed the Zangor Shaman in a single round of shooting.
They did.
Despite Lookout Sir, despite being partly behind a big rock, just didn't matter. That is a dead Zangor Shaman. And that was really huge for me because that was like a fast wizard that switches off the buffs for both the Enlightened and the Skyfires. And this was the debut of my Enlightened and Skyfires that have been, I've been working on for so long. And, they lost all of their value like almost immediately because of that.
Yeah. So if you roll 6 to hit, they do 2 mortal wounds, with an ability suitably called Headshot. So basically they just shot it right in their head immediately.
Yeah.
The first thing, like, I think they had a kind of sharpness. It's the first time they'd fought for a long time and they just saw a primary target and nailed it like straight away.
I think it was fair to say, and this is not, and there's another thing about this is it was so much fun that this doesn't matter at all, but you had some extremely hot dice, like particularly early, I remember, like it was a while ago and I couldn't really remember the particular rolls, but there was a lot of like 4-ups to hits where they were all 7s.
Yeah.
Like how did that happen?
Yeah, I had some really hot dice. And the other thing is like, it's really interesting how both armies scale up to that level. And when Stormcast scale up to 4,000 points, oh my god, the shooting is crazy.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. It was my longest phase, which is like nuts for a Stormcast army, really. Like,
yeah.
It was by far, it was like the equivalent of your magic phase almost.
Yeah. Well, my magic phase ended up quite a lot shorter because I couldn't get anything in range.
Yes, that's true.
Because it's like 18 inches. Because it's a huge board, 18 inches is not very far, whereas you had quite a lot longer in shooting. And so it was like just a storm of fire coming in. And then we had some like, so, and obviously you had the Star Drake, which was like such a big threat. Like waiting to come in. I was being cagey with the Lord of Change, trying to wait for the right moment, to bring him in. But I knew I needed to get the Lord of Change into range of your guys for the purposes of setting them on fire.
Of course.
So, as we, there's lots of, I think what I will do in order to like cover off the details, because we're inevitably going to forget things, we have a lot of photos and things, so I'll put them up in the show notes as well for this episode with a little bit of commentary to help people kind of visualize all of this because there's so much. And I'll do that for some of the photos we've been sent as well from other people's games. But yeah, loads of just like individually like, fun and sort of heroic moments. Like there was a battle between Pink Horrors and I think the Paladors and Vanguard on one side of the board.
Yes.
We can't even really go into because it's just a different game of Age of Sigmar that's happening over there.
There's an amazing, on my left flank, which is Lord Tantrus's.
Oh god, he was so bad. Yeah.
I'd say,
Tantrus is, like, Tantrus.exe has stopped responding.
It was so perfect and so funny. And I might as well actually talk about this now because it had no impact to the wider game. But, he went over to the left flank to try and reinforce it in the face of some screamers, I think.
Yeah, I sent all my screamers and the chariot.
The chariot. And, there were some just liberators protecting it. And Tantrus went over with, some other stuff later on to try and fix it. And, all he had to do was make a charge. And, I'd failed the charge. I rolled like 3 or something and I needed like 4.
Yeah.
And so I used the command point to re-roll and, it just rolled straight into Snake Eyes. And it was just like, Tantrus like staring gormlessly into space because he's so broken now. Like, as with, anyone who's the podcast for a long time will know that he's gone through hell and been reforged so many times that he's just like, if you keep photocopying a photocopy, you get this version of Tantrus.
He's a badly Xeroxed arse. Like,
yeah.
Like the best thing is because those screamers are like ripping apart a unit of liberators and it's the image of them, you're like, there's sort of like, there's a crash of thunder and here's the Dracoth and Tantrus, like, and it's like, sir, to the fore, like, no. No.
Like, help us, sir. I think he got over there eventually, but by the time it was far, far too late.
Yeah,
it was like the opposite of a heroic, saving charge.
Right, yeah. And I think he was hilariously ineffective.
Which is absolutely perfect.
Because like, a lot of my heroes had like big hero moments. Obviously the Zangor Shaman getting shot in the head was unfortunate, but like the Ogre Thaumaturge went like straight up the middle and like straight into the front line of your army, killed a lot of Secretors by himself.
He did work, yeah.
And then got like cut down in glorious combat. Like, but like having done his job, which was to like, cause I kind of wanted to stop you moving your like unkillable box of death. Cause also not enough stuff of yours was dying to make it really matter that you lost the reinforcement points. Because while this was happening, that Orc War was crashing into the Stormkeep. You lost your reinforcement points, but you were sitting on 700 reinforcement points that you didn't know how to use.
And also I had, like a 400 odd points of Paladins in space. Yeah. And the Prime, in fact. Like, I had loads of stuff in space before the game even started. I was fighting with, like, 2/3 of my army.
Yeah. And I couldn't shift it, really, because it was too far away. And also then, I think it was the game, one of the games, I think it was Ewan and James's game, gave you, because the Seraphim won, they captured the relocation orb, and that gave you the ability to resurrect a hero whenever you wanted to. So you had so many ways to bring things back. I knew this, that it was like, whereas my fate points were building quite slowly, like I got a little, like, people weren't, the way the fate point works is I was harvesting points from other games, but it was only on a 4-up. Yes. So when they cast a spell on a 4-up, I got a point. And if Archaon had won that game, that would have gone to it works all the time. And because the Seraphim one eventually switched it off, but I wasn't getting them in like, by the bucket load, which meant I couldn't just keep bringing stuff back. And I knew quite early, like, I'm going to want my Lord to change again.
Yeah.
And I started planning for that. Like, I want 36 fate points. And so, I was basically just playing the game of like, stop you from moving this unshiftable death box onto the central objective, because I'll probably never get you out of there again. Yeah. And it was also like, keep you in that box because eventually Fee can collapse it. Yeah. And that'll make such a big difference. So like the Ogre Thaumaturge is just running like across the board and smashing into that front line and doing loads of damage and forcing you to kind of like pile in and surround him for a turn was like, that was his entire job. Like I've got this thing about him that he's like the Captain Scarlet of Minotaurs and he can't die. Yeah. Cause of fate won't let him. But that was like, maybe this is the point where he's learned how to abuse that. It's like, just like moo, crash, lightning, and
off he goes.
Yeah. Finn. So we ended up with, but it did get a little cagier, and I want to talk about, so there was lots of good moments as other games ended. So there was a moment that was really huge, and actually we'll come back to how huge it was, but the skirmish game ended obviously among the first games to end. Yeah. And that skirmish game was, I believe it was Tom's Order versus, and I know Tom's Tzeentch, and for the life of me, cannot recall the name of the person he was playing against. Really sorry. Tom's opponent who won that game, with Stormcast in a skirmish game. And it was the good skirmish scenario, the artifact hunt scenario. Yeah. And we wanted to make this like actually literally true. So whoever won that could give you or me an artifact. Right. And it's a bit of a retcon. It's like this happened before the battle. Rather than someone comes up and says, sir, we found it. It's like,
it's almost like a D&D move or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? Or like a pen and paper RPG thing where it's like, oh, you've had this all along. But that also allows us to have fights across time as well as space.
It was really cool. But like, because, Order won that gave you the ability to pick an artifact mid-game.
It was huge. That was like so many things that people did on other tables ended up being huge in that game. And obviously I picked an item that gave a mortal wound save to the Star Drake. And the Star Drake's only weakness is mortal wounds, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or just like apart from just one-off delete spells, mortal wounds is all the Star Drake really fears. And suddenly I had this like I think a 4+ save against mortal wounds for the rest of the game, thanks to that one fight, that one skirmish battle.
Yeah.
That one treasure hunt.
And we'll get back to that, why that was so important.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, so we had this wonderful moment, because the Lord of Change doesn't like shooting at all. And I was getting shot to pieces.
Yeah.
But I got him into the center, and I knew I had to start putting damage onto the Star Drake, and you committed the Star Drake to charging the Lord of Change. And by this point, the Zangor were all over the place. Like, it was a big, big fight. The Enlightened were in the front line fighting you. We had fights going on everywhere. So the combat phase started to take a while because we'd pick points to activate things. And this is, if the ending hadn't been so spectacular, this would easily be the moment of the game for me.
I agree.
So you charge the Star Drake into the Lord of Change. This is a death. The Lord of Change is on 3 wounds. This is a dead Lord of Change.
So this was, I should say that this was my round of charges. This was the Fulminators going in. This was the Sequitors going into the center. This was everything that is designed to fight the Star Drake, just going in on the point. And I did all my charges, like I rolled them all, got them off. And this was going to be, for me, this is the smash phase. This is when I win
like the glorious kind of like, the horns are blown, and like, there's some big doots in this. Oh god, this is also the turn where Dr. Doots dooted the ultimate horn.
He
killed like 4 Zangor or something with this crazy doot.
Yes. Yeah.
And so basically, so this is what happened. So this huge series of charges, and you, I think, not really fearing what would happen if I activated the Lord of Change, started activating elsewhere.
Yeah.
So you activated the Fulminators, you activated which were ripping apart Zangor, I think, activated the Sequitors. You were being quite, cautious. And then literally, as you were running out of things to activate that weren't the Star Drake, meanwhile, underground, Fee's, Hell Pit Abomination deals the final bit of damage to the central column that's underneath your army.
Yeah.
And we realize at this point, as that quadrant collapses, that the bases, as you have finished a charge, the bases on the Star Drake and the Lord of Change are a 1/4 inch apart. And the line of the center of the board goes exactly through that 1/4 inch.
I mean, it's not an exaggeration. Like, it was
exactly there. Like, the Lord of Change was exactly in the quadrant that wasn't hit, and Star Drake was exactly in the quadrant that was.
Yeah.
And obviously Star Drake can fly. And then suddenly it's just chaos everywhere. Like, half the Stormcast army is falling into the ground. Yeah. Like, Dr. Doots gets swallowed by the earth, and there's just a huge round of cheers. He came back.
He did because, like, due to the Doot, like, he's achieved a kind of transcendence that few heroes in the Stormcast army could ever hope to achieve.
And they fall into the ground. And then you rolled a 1 for the Star Drake. So the Star Drake then falls through the ground into the other game.
Yep. So
which saves the Lord of Change's life, because it's just like, but it was like, it was hilarious, but it was also such a perfect Zinch moment of like, there's no way this Lord of Change survives this unless the ground literally opens up underneath the Star Drake by accident Zinch's right now.
Plan all
exactly. Like, it was so good.
And there's, I want to point out, there's the ceremonial passing of the Star Drake to the other table, because, like, you know, they get to play with my Star Drake now. Like, that's the deal. Like, so my Star Drake just went around trying to eat a Hell Pit Abomination for a turn or 2.
Yeah. So when you fell down, if you could fly, you could make an attempt to fly back up.
Yeah.
So it did get back up eventually, but it was such a wonderful, daft
moment, wasn't it?
Moment. And that actually put me in quite a good position, because like, your momentum was really robbed by that.
I was relying on that charge for sure. Yeah.
And it was around this time that, and I think I knew at this point that I was going to get my auxiliaries. So like, I've got another 1,000-point army coming on. Yeah. Like, this could change. This could turn.
They're tough as well. They could fight.
At which point, 20 naked dwarves run into the backfield of the Skaven army and knock down another pillar.
They do.
And then roll a 6, which collapses the one next to that. So right after, as I'm busy laughing at your entire army falling down a hole, the entire backside of my board falls down a hole as well and kills like 4 of my heroes.
Yeah.
The Gaunt Summoner falls down a really deep hole. The Curseling falls down a really deep hole. Loads of the Pink Horrors fall down a hole. Loads of the Zangor fall down a hole twice because some of them are on your side and some of them are on mine. So it's just madness at this point.
Sure.
But it was so much fun because of that. And meanwhile, Nagash is now won. And he's on his way.
He's about to come through this, the realm gate. We set up a realm gate, on the side where Nagash would come through. And he does. And, Jim's done such an awesome job painting that model. And it's such an awesome, imposing model. Suddenly it's there and, there's a really exciting moment where my Star Drake flew back up and you had the Star Drake, the Lord of Change and Nagash all on the same, and it felt like these titanic forces, Grand Alliances just clashing.
Well, so what happened, listen, so the Lord of Change died.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
Yeah, Lord of Change died, and then, the, Destruction army arrived on the other side, and then the Changeling died, and that was my last hero. But we
shot him.
Yeah, he shot this Changeling to death. But then my auxiliaries arrived, which were led by a Chaos Lord on a Manticore with, an Icon of Tzeentch. And it looked really over for me at this point, like, cause I'm just out of stuff, but I had been sitting on, like, my backup plan. Just went and got the huge tray of summoning points and just, that's one Lord of Change, please. And so, like, added a full health Lord of Change back to that moment. So it's like, Lord of Change rips its way back into real space at the same time as the Star Drake flies back out of the hole it fell down and Nagash emerges from
just like slowly steps out of this portal.
Yeah. It was just the wrestling entrance.
Yeah, for sure. Like, so good.
And that kind of led us into the end game. So basically what we did for the end game is the pillar, the big horn was in the center of a ring of ruins. And the idea was that the control zone then expanded from base contact with the horn to the entire ring. And we entered a kind of sudden death mode where simply channeling it was enough to win the game at that point, rather than having to gather the points from the objectives. And that means anyone can win. The Destruction army faced a problem in just getting there in time, and all of your heroes were converging on it.
Yeah, we should talk about how the Destruction thing works precisely, because they came on the opposite board edge to Nagash.
Yeah, so it was now 4 points. Yeah.
So it was actually, all 4.
But there were a lot of like scattered bits of like not dead yet bits of my army and your army in their way. So they were faced with the challenge of almost using our stuff as like charges to piggyback,
right?
Like to get closer,
which is very orc.
And meanwhile on the other side, Nagash just doing like, I remember Chimp's disbelief that a Lord of Change can only cast twice because Nagash can cast 8 spells.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? But you're supposed to be the Master of Magic. It's like, yeah, but I cost 300 points.
And Nagash is like 700 or 800.
Yeah. And so it just the Nagash Magic Pain bus. Like so many good moments. The Dark Earth War Queen went straight for Nagash. Like, and actually, like, I think took a wound off him before getting completely, like, annihilated.
Yeah, and then I think Nagash hurt someone and then just healed right back up.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Threw my, like, blood crushes into him. And it was like, there was a moment where I thought you and I might have to work together to stop Nagash. So we had like a cool moment of like, I think the Palador's like trying to get out of the way of Nagash as he like casts like an umbral portal ahead of them and like
deletes
the Lord Aquila.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like blood crushers of Khorne smash into Nagash from the side to try and slow him down.
Yeah.
And actually in doing so, I think prevented him from being able to get to the center.
Yeah, there was some important movement shenanigans. Basically, the thing that Nagash could have done because he can fly is that he can retreat out of combat over units and get close to the center.
Yeah.
But because of the sort of the spacing at the time with a lot of different units that were coming in on him meant that his base just wouldn't fit in any of.
He was too big.
He was too large. And so, he just couldn't quite escape the combat. So there was this kind of flurry of panics turning on the Lord of Death. And a lot of Stormcast paid the price. The Paladors, I think, were just deleted from existence.
But it was this moment where it's like Paladors and Khorne blood crushers just like trying to slow him down.
Yeah, which was such an awesome image. Like,
it's the most metal thing that could have happened.
Yeah, for sure.
But then what it came down to is the fact that the Star Drake got back out of the ground.
Yeah.
And the Star Drake was in position to channel and win the game for you.
Yeah.
And this is as we draw to the conclusion. This is the morning of the Sunday at this point. And I think Chimp and I realized the same thing, which is that if that Star Drake doesn't die now, you've won. Like, it has to die. And so we basically had to port everything, like every bit of magic a Lord of Change can muster, everything Nagash can do into the Star Drake. And so now the Star Drake, your new general, kind of this heroic Stormcast figure on the back of this massive dragon, is just like, I imagined it as like, just like pouring lightning energy into the spire, basically, as both the Lord of Death and the Lord of Change try and rip it to pieces. And tearing chunks out of it.
Yeah.
But that 4-up mortal wound save, won in a game of skirmish a day earlier, just completely sapped their ability to hurt the Star Drake to a certain point. To the point where we got it to 1 wound.
And 1 wound. And let's also say that the Star Drake took a couple of wounds while he was underground.
From the Hell Pit
Abomination. Yeah. So all of that contributed to the Star Drake's stats.
So it's there channeling. It's on its last leg. So like, if it dies, the game isn't over, but it opens the game up to everybody else, basically. Because your rest of your heroes have to get in range, and all the rest of your heroes are, and also even this was a random chance, because the way we decided is if there are multiple heroes inside the channeling pit, basically, you roll a dice to determine which one is channeling. So rather than
I had like 4 people in there.
Yeah,
so
and
it was very lucky that he
was the Star Drake. Because if it had been any of the others, we could have probably killed it.
Yeah, you could just zapped one of them. Yeah.
So it all comes down to this. There's 1 wound left, and we're like, has Tom just won? Because like, we can't shoot it. Because it's really almost impossible to shoot the Star Drake and nothing's in range. But is anything in range? Yes. One thing is in range. A Doom Diver catapult.
The Doom Diver from the forces of destruction coming from the east.
Exactly. A Doom Diver catapult, if you're not aware, hopefully you are, is a goblin in a pointy hat with a little wingsuit on, loaded into a catapult.
Yes. Yeah.
And so basically all comes down to, can this one Doom Diver goblin fling itself through the air and kill a Star Drake before it can do the ultimate honk? And it was the best. Watching that hit, it hit.
It hit.
It wounded.
It wounded.
And then you rolled a natural 6 for the save.
Oh, yes.
Which means the Star Drake heals.
And he, back up to 2 wounds, he just ate that goblin
There's no other canonical way of thinking about this other than like,
yeah, feel better now. Yeah. And then he roars a final scream, and the pillar shatters, and the ultimate honk ripples across the zone. The zone,
yeah. So realigning all of those realm gates, with
back to order.
With order.
And, that Stormkeep is connection with Azir is reestablished, and, Fort Tantris, which was the fallen fort, will rise again. Tantris won't. He's going to be quietly retired. But,
oh god, it was like the fact that it came down to,
it was breathless at the end. It was astonishing stuff. And again, just all the moments that led into that. The fact that the only reason the Star Drake was wounded was because it fell down a giant hole and had to fight, escape an army for a turn. The fact that he had the saver tool that allowed him to survive was because of a little skirmish game that happened at some point in the past.
The fact that, I was able to slow down Nagash was about the auxiliaries arriving from a different game. Like,
there's so many kind of moments to kind of head in, and, it was super gratifying and really exciting. Like, it was such a good story. Like, you're in the story and you're part of it, but it's out of control enough to be so surprising at the same time that it was remarkable that it came to such a cool crunch moment.
Yeah.
Like in that final turn, the stakes felt really high.
And we had to like change some of the rules on the fly just to kind of, not to engineer that scenario, but to prevent things from simply ending. Like, just to make sure.
Or from going on forever.
Yeah. And so we had to do some sort of, but the point is that it was I do a lot of pen and paper role playing, and it felt more like, in some ways, like that sort of collective buy-in that in a good tabletop group everyone has, where it's like, everyone's invested in this working. So no one's going to go, oh, but I want to do it like this. Like, you can have those scenarios in pen and paper, absolutely. But you almost know how to recognize them in pen and paper, whereas like, this one person just wants to break the game. And therefore, it's not really going to be fun for everyone, because they're going to build a character that kills all the monsters and just wants to kill and loot things. And, that can be a way of playing the game, but you have to build the group so that that's appropriate. This felt like we could do this mad game, definitely the best game of Age of Sigmar I've ever played, because it was 27 people playing simultaneously.
An entwined, narrative game.
Yeah. just, almost entirely painted armies, I think.
Yeah,
like,
for sure,
and so it just looked great.
It
And
looks
this-
amazing.
Yeah. And it was possible because everyone had, we gathered everyone because we were still figuring it out the morning of the Saturday. It's like,
crowded around a little laptop, just going, yeah, because we're still matching people together.
because also we wanted to, but because it had to be hand designed. Like we went through, I asked people to let us know which armies they were bringing in advance, and it was okay to change and what approximate point values, but we had to figure things out. We had to figure out matching armies that made sense thematically, were approximately the right size, but also trying to make sure that players, played with people of a similar experience level or attitude to the game. And that's not to say that there were no like wild outliers in terms of attitude to the game in that group, but you do want to make sure that people who are,
Brand new to the game,
maybe
not playing
matching
someone super.
yeah, or if they are one of the things was that like, I believe, I don't know, I think it was both of the people Fee was playing against, and I may be wrong about this, and if I am, apologies, were like a little less familiar, or I hadn't played as much as Fee has because he's played loads, and I was like, well, I trust that he's a good teacher, so it's like, he's a good person to entrust with the 2v1. Not that almost anyone could have done it, I think, but it was those considerations. And so it was like hand designing this experience for every single person involved, which is something that I'm really glad we can do with a community like this, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like not as repeatable as you'd think. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and not that it should be, but it's like, it's not a trivial thing to figure out. And crucially, it wouldn't be possible, I think, were we selling tickets to our narrative event and anyone can come along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it helps so that we know people sort of, or that
Yeah, of
people
course.
can be in email contact in advance.
And also, I mean, just to stress, like, it wasn't, the entire event wasn't about that narrative thing. It was just that happened to be the biggest event of the weekend. There are loads of people playing different systems. There was some Star Wars there, Adeptus Titanicus, people playing loads of, Shadespire as well. And it wasn't like the core concern, but for everyone who turned up, like, I hope that everyone really enjoyed it. I feel like everyone did.
We had good feedback. But
I also think that, nothing being decided until the day is ideal in some ways because, like, you can't game it if you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you can't create an army that's going to crush the thing the scenario that's coming. You've got to improvise on the day or just play with the spirit of the day.
And it was nice to kind of gather everyone around and reveal what their matchups were going to be.
Yes, yeah, that was
and
really
like
fun.
that was, and I think the reason I talk about all of that is because it's like the thing I came away with was like, that is the most fun I've ever had playing this game. And despite the mad logistical challenge of pulling it off, it was in some ways the least stressed I've been playing Age of Sigmar, which stretches to everything from hour games to tournament games I've played, because it was just so obviously about just having a nice time, and it really didn't matter who won anything.
For sure.
That, it was the fact that you and I forgot to pay attention to how many points our armies were. But we kinda had a ballpark, but we didn't fuss about it.
No.
Like, they weren't the same.
the point
It
of it.
was like probably a couple hundred points difference. Don't really know which way. Didn't matter. And like, not to say that this is the ultimate vindication of some of the ideas of what Age of Sigmar was originally designed to be, but it felt like stripping away some of the complexity of scenarios, some of the complexity added by things like artifacts and allegiance abilities. We didn't go nuts with artifacts, for example.
Yeah.
Like, taking away that stuff, which for a game of this size is pragmatic, I think, but also like just chilling out about some of the kind of competitive vagaries of the system and just like kind of doing what feels cool or like what suits the narrative and like playing basically, like role playing was so much more entertaining than a lot of the games of Age of Sigmar I've played. Like, and I've had really good competitive games of Age of Sigmar, but something about the time investment versus the relative looseness of the system, like this just felt like a better use of that system.
Yeah. I really agree with that. I think it showed me how flexible this system could be, almost. It's like, oh wow, we could just sort of fuse this into almost a pen and paper RPG style tournament structure. It's not a tournament at all, but event structure. And the system bends to that perfectly ably. There are so many scenarios that you can use. There are so many, it's very easy to add rules into it. And when I look at like narrative event packs, I always see them just massively overcomplicate the game. And I hope that we didn't do that with a lot of the sort of stipulations and things. I don't think we put too much extra sort of headroom onto the top of the game. By just, people rolling 4 places after spells to deliver a token is as complicated as it got, and that feels manageable.
I think there was the only thing that was a bit hard for certain people was the Iron Jaws versus Order Defenders games had to keep track of 2 different kinds of reinforcement points.
Right.
Because it was like both the magic stuff and also your reinforcement points.
Yeah.
But that was as complicated as it got.
Yeah, we could have streamlined that by making them both token systems, and then I would interpret my own tokens differently, and that would stop them doing the maths.
Yeah.
But it's just small things like that. But otherwise, I think everyone just got to play a fun game, and like honestly, people were free to change the scenarios they wanted as well. Like I think there's something really valuable about giving people the power to define their own games
This is why your game is important. This
event scenario.
Here is a scenario if you don't have one in mind.
Yeah.
But
if you want to play,
here's your opponent. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, we need this from you, but go about it however feels right to you is a really nice.
Yeah, it's improvisational, and that feels risky and scary, almost like you're trying to, we've never done this. We've never done this before.
Yeah.
But like just turning up on the day and having a few ideas in a doc and then actually suddenly having to adapt everything on the fly in an hour. And then I think it turned out kind of cool.
Yeah, I was really proud of it.
I was kind of proud as well. And thank you so much to everyone for
absolutely.
for just like investing in it so much and sending us awesome battle reports and just being so fucking cool about it.
Yeah, and because it really comes down to that.
Yeah.
And I think but I also think sometimes people are almost waiting for permission to care less about the specifics of the rules, if you know what I mean, because people in playing with strangers scenarios, the reason for that event pack is to create a kind of, also for really heavily designing stuff in advance is to create, a sort of understood baseline for everybody to work from. And that makes sense when you don't necessarily know the attitudes of all the people involved. Yeah. But I do feel like I wish there were more things like this, because the great thing about tabletop gaming for me of all kinds of the last couple of years is there really is a commonality. You get the occasional outlier, people with bad attitude or people who aren't fun to play with. But broadly speaking, I've been impressed by how nice everyone is.
Yeah.
And I almost kind of want to like liberate people from the strictures of matched play in some ways. Like, I don't mean that totally seriously, but like, I probably won't go to another event like the London GT, for example, because I don't enjoy getting, I haven't played one in 2nd edition, but, think of the equivalents. Like, I don't really want the experience of being tabled by, Nagash or by Lord Croak or by a Cunning Ruck or in the old days, like all of this stuff. Like, those things are valid, but they're playing a game I don't really want to participate in. I don't want that to be my only outlet for going and playing with strangers to be this. Like, I've had this experience, and I don't think I've spoken about this on the pod, but like, I've been a little disappointed by X-Wing 2nd edition. Not because I think I think there are some things they've got to figure out. I think it's on the whole a lot better. But because the developers of the game overthrowing the status quo and building a new X-Wing hasn't changed the tenor of the community. And the community was warped enormously by how limited the metagame became and how gamey it became and how far from, I think, the spirit of the game it got.
Really interesting.
And even fixing the game isn't enough. So, it's like, you saw it in the evolution of Bristol X-Wing, from people just showing up with lists they'd built at home to net listing becoming more and more prevalent as it became more and more necessary. It's a situation where if one person net lists aggressively, then someone else will as well, so they have a chance. And even though X-Wing 2.0 is a fun and relatively open game, we're still in a scenario, the last little event I did, where I didn't really have any fun because the top lists were the kind of quite rules abusive-y, kind of boring power list stuff, even at a small local thing. And that changes the tenor of the environment in a big way. And, I really love when there are viable alternatives to playing in that setting where you feel like you have to be competitive, where you feel like if you're not paying attention to points efficiency, if you're not making spreadsheets about the probability of certain amounts of damage happening, you're not playing the quote unquote proper game. Like, I think that whole side of it is a bit of a curse sometimes. Like, because there's so much fun to be had just enjoying the rules as a medium for having a fun time with a person.
And being part of a cool story. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, it was so cool. It was really good. I always sort of haven't thought about it too much since, because I've been so busy with the end of the year. But like, just talking about it now and thinking back on it, it was like the fact that people travelled to Firestorm, and also big shout out to Firestorm.
Yeah.
A fantastic venue. Super good place to do this. Staff were awesome. Their shop's brilliant. The tables were rad, and the scenery was awesome. Just everything about it for me was just, it's a great venue.
I was really glad that I stuck to my guns on that being a good location for it, because I'd happily go back. In fact, they've, and they've expressed interest in having us back, so I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, no, they were super good, and it's such a good place to play war games. The fact that they let us kind of leave our stuff out overnight and it was secure and everything was just like there the next day. Like, I don't know, it was just everything about it was accommodating and brilliant. And thank you everyone for travelling, because I know that people travel a long way in some cases to get all the way down to Cardiff. But hopefully it was worth it for everyone.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Man, it was so good.
It's a nice thing that happened.
Yeah, it was so good though.
Let's do some questions, shall we?
Do some questions.
From some of the same people who were in Cardiff. I'll just bring up the thing. I should have done this already. Sorry. Mitchell writes, Dear Bloodthirston and Senior of Slanesh on Snootbeast. A while ago on the main pod, as in CNC proper, you were talking about Destiny 2 and how much of its lore is just Chekhov's guns pointed in various directions. This got me thinking about how much of 40k is the same. What's your favourite huge lore gun that will probably never be addressed? Mine is probably the idea that the Omnissiah might be a Catan. Thanks for the pod. I probably wouldn't be waist deep in unpainted plastic if it wasn't for you renewing my enthusiasm each month.
It's a really good question, because like, completely correct about how both AOS and 40k lore works. Is that you set up as many malign, quiet, completely universe destroying threats as possible, and then one day you get to make a box around one of them. I think for me, it's probably the Tyranid Hive fleets. Before the appearance of the Great Tear across the universe, whatever it's called.
The Cicatrix Maledictum.
Lovely. And, that there used to be one that was just coming up from like underneath, like, just this ultimate unstoppable hive, that's Destiny thing. Tyranid, force that was gonna definitely obliterate everyone. And it was almost here, but never actually arrived. And then the universe exploded. I always enjoyed that idea that everyone could just get eaten tomorrow.
I think for me, it's the, whatever the fuck Belisarius Call is doing with traitor Primarch genes. Partly because, I mean, like things like the Blood Ravens, as they're a loyalist Thousand Sons successor chapter, obviously. All that stuff, like, that's a rich vein of triggers they probably won't pull on, like, just confirming that there are loyalist traitors around. I'm really into that. Yeah.
That's super cool. I need to read the new, the sequel to Dark Imperium book, actually. The Dark Imperium book, is great at painting Call as this interesting, subversive character.
Yeah.
And I love the relationship between the Imperium and the Mechanicum. Like, I think that's one of my favorite things about the forces of Order in 40k.
There's also the, actually, and also the sort of the fate of the old ones and what the hell the Blackstone Fortresses are, which Blackstone Fortress goes to in some detail about a little bit more, but like, there's that sense of like, there's more stuff in this particular set of Heaven and Earth than are dreamt of in several Horatios. I don't know.
Several heresies.
Yeah. The
Your
Horatio heresy.
Good.
Our next question comes from Pete Fee, man who collapsed ground, also writes into every episode, who writes, Hi there, Tom Lightning Wizard and Chris Tentacle Wizard. This month's question is, why do you think you've both bounced off 40k to some degree? At the start of 8th edition, you both seemed very enthusiastic about it, but you've since gone a bit cool on it. Is this because of a too fast release schedule, something about the way the game plays not appealing, a desire to focus on your existing projects, Kill Team being a more realistic alternative, none of the above? Always love for the pod, Peak/Fienia. He does ask a bonus Primarch question, which we can get to first. Which Primarch is which GW game system, and why is Jagatai Khan Blood Bowl?
Does he die randomly and in horrible ways?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he kills randomly in horrible ways. Like,
trips over a lot.
Can't pick up a ball.
I think Roberto Guilliman is 40k because he's very, and this may be leading my answer to the broader question. He really is very into that codex. Like, he loves his rules.
He loves a good big rule book.
He does love a good big rule book.
I think he'd hate the AOS rules on 4 pages thing, which isn't a thing anymore, but
No,
AOS
yeah.
one thing. I think he'd be like, well, no, that's not enough. There's not enough detail.
Not enough. I think, yes, whereas, I mean, who would love the rules on 4 pages thing? None of them are like a real freewheeling bunch. Maybe
Quite strict, aren't they?
Sanguinius, maybe.
Rules on 4 pages.
Yeah, no, maybe. Like, or Horus.
I mean, Horus is, yeah. They're like, interpret it how you want, but just look at my fabulous face and do what I say. Horus. Do my heresy.
Do my heresy.
Please. You rolled he got that 4+ roll to convert Primarch to evil thing down.
He did,
quite well.
He did.
You've got to admire that.
You're a bit of like a Horus Heresy centrist, Tom. Is this what
there can't be any such...
He does speak to the people. You've got to admit he does speak to people.
Who are the centrists in like, the Tau, I suppose. It's like, well, they're all as bad as each other, aren't they, really? If you think
the greater
about it.
good. Yeah. It's tentacle beasts on one side and it's just a lot of Catholics on the other.
Yeah. It's all just pointless killing in the end, isn't it? Let's
kill some more people with this drone.
Let's hide.
That is the kind of, I really want you to do a Tau audiobook. What's that, Commander Farsight? Nothing. Let's go home.
Shall we shoot a gun at it? Yes. Yes. Not answered the question there at all.
No. So about bouncing off 40k, because I definitely did.
Yeah,
I think,
right.
I think I find 40k a little slow, personally, and a bit, like, I'm always surprised by, like, how, I think in 40k it's more common for units to just not really do anything in an entire game than it is in AOS, where movement is a lot more of a thing. Like, maybe I don't feel 100% experienced enough, but one of the reasons for that is my first couple of experiences of playing full games of 40k, just none of them were, like, amazing. Like, I don't think I've ever had, like, a great game.
That strikes the core for me. Like, I just haven't had an exciting game of 40k. Like, and I think part of it is that the forces you get in the starter box are boring. Like, the way they both operate is quite slow and trudging. And that's by no means how, like, most of the 40k armies operate. It's just I haven't had a chance to play those. The most exciting stuff for me has always been centered around the Blight drone, which is really quick and has, short range, devastating capability.
Yeah.
And, that's always been exciting for me to play with. The rest of it, though, has just been slowly trudging forwards. And I think that's partly down to a lot of the way the Primaris seem to be designed, isn't that they have a lot of kind of commanders and things that buff shooting if they're within radius, which means that you just sort of castle them up and then march them forward or stand them still. And admittedly I do that with my Stormcast sometimes, but there's always fast attack options with Stormcast and dropping down from space and lots of other things and lots of wild, quick movement abilities. And that's kind of what I enjoy about war games. I like things moving fast around the table and bashing into each other. I'm sure a load of armies do that, but, standing off at a certain range and rolling lots of dice for shooting, just hasn't been as appealing to me in the games I've played so far as I've experienced in AOS.
And I think, because I think Kill Team got to the heart of that faster. Like, the things that I miss are like tanks and stuff, but like I almost don't mind because that sort of like tactical moving and infantry combat stuff is handled so well by Kill Team that it didn't feel necessary to paint up more stuff than is necessary for that. I think 40k, because it's more complex as a list building game, I feel like I don't think that they've done this on purpose, but I feel like 40k is a more entertaining game to plan and build armies in than Age of Sigmar, but not necessarily a more fun game to play. So, it invites cool kit bash ideas and where every piece of gear your characters are equipped with matters and, and you can get into long discussions about what's optimal and what's not You know, I've had these discussions with Fee actually about like how to build armies for different, you know, I love the codexes. Like I've got a bunch of 40k codexes just because I like the planning stuff. But I found that so far I've preferred that to actually playing. So it's like the window shopping element. Like I can understand when people start new armies all the time, because with Age of Sigmar, like I'm at a point now where pretty soon I will have painted every single Tzeentch unit there is. And realistically, like, unless I really start caring about, like, certain weapon variants for Lords of Change, there's no need for me to do anything else with them ever again. I can run every Tzeentch army there is within reason. And if I can't, then do I really want to? Like, you know what I mean? There's like, whereas with 40k, it feels like everything you build is really specific and you know, you feel some more ownership on it. I think that's a real strength. And I feel it pull me in and make me want to collect Imperial Fists all the time for some reason. But at the same time, do I actually want to play it? Not a lot, really.
Yeah, it's weird because I've not played enough to really level any judgment of the system, but it's just that, I don't have the urge. It's because I've seen what can happen in Age of Sigmar, the kind of wild rolls and reversals and even the turn system is part of that, actually. Like the fact that double turns are a thing and they aren't in 40k. It's just, I don't know, a bit less drama somehow.
Yeah.
I'm sure once you're into it, you find drama in different spaces in the game. And I love 40k lore. Like, the universe is so good.
I think that's the thing, is we've been so treated to like other ways to play it, like Blackstone, for example, where it's like,
that's the perfect way in for me to playing 40k stuff.
Like I'm doing more 40k stuff than ever. Like I love the Titanicus minis. I love Horus Heresy stuff, but it's almost like the actual battle game at the bottom of it all never feels like the main expression for what I'm into. That said, I would like to finish up my Necron army next year and maybe try a little bit more with them.
Yeah, we could do some Necron versus Admech. Totally different armies to the core set as well.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I don't hope this doesn't come across as too damning, because I feel like I'm not coming up with enough experience, but that's why, like, I haven't, it has never grabbed me, and it's somewhat on it to grab me, I think. You know what I mean? That system has to, like, jump out. Actually, and I did like 8th when I first played it, but I think it's because I was hungrier for a little bit more sophistication than Age of Sigmar felt like it was offering at the time. But Age of Sigmar's now had a really good second edition. And some of that 40k sophistication is filtered into things like Kill Team, which gives you access to them.
It's more manageable.
Yeah, and it's quicker, and also the consequences feel a bit more kind of real in some ways when it's just one trooper firing at another trooper, etc. Our next question comes from Rachel, who writes, Dear Christogor and Tom Gore, what hopes and dreams do you have for an Age of Sigmar skirmish 2.0? Do you imagine it being more or less like Kill Team? Do you envision the plurality of Mortal Realms themed skirmish games with AOS skirmish at one end of the spectrum and a more granular character-focused Kill Team Mordheimish thing at the other? Keep podding along, Rachel. P.S. North Star Figures are bringing out a lovely all-women soldiers kit for Frostgrave, and I'm very excited.
Oh, cool.
That is cool.
I don't want, like, Kill Team for AOS. I want Necromunda for AOS, because what I want is...
So more time,
yeah. I want factions that aren't from the main armies.
Right, yeah.
I want sort of sub-factions and kind of in-between parts of that universe. And that's kind of the stuff that the AOS setting still lacks. Is just, you know, certain cults, certain, you know, names below the main armies that exist in cities that still fight and even just like, you know, lines of vampires, that kind of stuff. Just extra under, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a sub-layer of lore to dig into. Like a Necromunda, basically.
All that said, though, I would love it to be more like Kill Team in a specific regard, which is that, like, Kill Team uses the basic rules, but redesigns every faction. And obviously, like, the stat line of a Space Marine is broadly equivalent between the two, but crucially, they have the freedom to change it. So I would want, like, skirmish-specific War Scrolls.
Yeah.
Not just a list of what's valid and what's not, but, like, rethink those units, reflect what they do. I don't want them to be wildly different, but I want Games Workshop to give themselves the freedom to take things away, to add, you know, different systems. You know, the fact that Kill Team uses a different initiative system to 40k, has alternating activations like bolt action, do that. You know, like, because some of those things are just more appropriate.
Really interesting, yeah.
Like, I don't think those changes would be a one-to-one fit, but I would want, like, you know, Kill Team is a serious attempt to take the basic kind of vocabulary of 8th edition 40k and make it interesting with 5 models aside. And that really needs to happen for Skirmish, because the problem with Skirmish is that it's just AOS with 2 rules changes, really. Like, models in a unit can move individually. That's it.
It's fiercely unbalanced as well. Not that balance is everything, but you need enough for people to not just ruin games for themselves by running things they want to run, right? Like, that's a problem with skirmish.
You need to figure out how magic's going to work in that scenario. You need you need a completely different point system. It can't just be a derivation from the base points for a completely different game.
Yeah, you can't just apply a formula.
Yeah.
Well, you can, they did. But, it's not necessarily the best way to create a serious game.
I'd love them to do it. But
Yes,
I agree. Like, of all the, like, put the big list of things, I'm like, yep, I'm buying that. Is like a Mordheim or a Necromunda equivalent for AOS. Right in, because I loved Mordheim.
I loved Mordheim.
I know maybe we talked about it plenty on the pod, but like,
we have, but
it's always meant more to me than Necromunda.
Yeah, same here. I think the Necromunda comparison is like, so I'd love to see a warband that is, a cult getting into Siege cult, where they're not fully demon, but they've got like elements of Siege coming out, and you see how like imperial citizens could become chaos,
Yeah.
And that's a part of the fiction that we've not seen in models really very much. And a smaller scale skirmish warband is a good place to experiment with those aspects of the fiction that haven't been presented previously.
Yeah, I'd really love that. That'd be great. I don't know, I have much to add other than that'd be great.
Pretty good.
Kingsley writes, "Hi Chris and Tom. New forces in Age of Sigmar seem to be made up exclusively of weird and wonderful new factions that don't really neatly map onto any of the old fantasy tropes. And the number of factions seems to be growing all the time. By contrast, the only new stuff in 40k seems to be add-ons for the Imperials, with only a few extra models here and there for the other factions. And there hasn't really been a new alien faction since the Tau, before they got an apostrophe. Personally, I'd like to see more alternatives to the men in full body armor theme. But what would you want from a new Xenos army? And do you think there's room for 40k to expand in new directions while the Eldar languish with their 10,000-year-old plastic guardians?" Cheers, Kingsley. Perfectly flat space bears.
Perfectly flat?
Have you not seen the perfectly flat space bears?
I've not seen the perfectly flat
I will
space
show
bears.
you the lexiconum entry for perfectly flat space bears.
Okay, could this be a faction?
It is a faction in 40k. They don't have models.
Oh my god.
I'm not joking, Tom. This is a thing.
Okay, so we'll explore that in a moment, but this has reminded me actually that, calling all the way back to our talk about the finale to our narrative game, Chimp has given me, he's got a Gargant kit and he's given me bespoke squashed goblin, that will now live on the base of the Stardrake.
Oh, awesome.
Forevermore. So I'm going to add it to the base. I'm going to paint him up, and it's going to be that one last Doom Diver that tries to take him down will forever live on the base of the Stardrake.
That's an incredible idea.
Yeah.
That's great.
But anyway, yes, back to the question.
New Xenos races.
New Xenos races. I think the reason why we've not seen really brand new stuff from 40k is because they're still quite early in the rolling out of 8th edition, and they've been so fast just to convert the old factions into 8th edition properly that we can't expect to see anything new for ages. I think that new Eldar offshoots is a really good shout for stuff they're going to do.
Proper Inari.
Yeah.
Exodites. I'd like to see Exodites done.
Even Harlequins could come back. I think they still love Harlequins. I think that you could easily see them. I'm not sure we'll get like Striking Scorpions and, all those ranges I used to love re-envisioned, but it's a bit like the elves in AOS, right? Like they're going to come back in different forms.
I'd be interested to see if they ever brought the old ones back, like the Slan. Like what 40k lizard men look like.
Oh, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah.
Like, if they ever returned or something like that. Because there's so many. I'd actually really like. I don't know if they'd ever do it, but I would love it if there was another human faction out there somewhere that hadn't been, protected by warp storms or something. You see them in the Horus Heresy books. It's not a Xenos race, so I'm cheating a bit, but like.
Almost like Golden Age, maybe.
Or like, a pre-Imperium Dark Age of Technology era human faction that's grown completely separately.
Yeah, that could be crazy. That'd be exciting.
Because there's loads of references to that in the Horus Heresy books to like, this faction's basically the Federation from Star Trek, so we have to set them on fire.
Yes. There's the idea that their mission to stretch outwards throughout the galaxy and reunite all of humanity was interrupted by Horus, right? They didn't complete that mission. So the further out that you go, there's loads of potential for humans that have grown different.
The real Xenos was man.
Oh no.
That would be great. I'd really like that. it's obviously, you can, just pull ideas out of a bag otherwise, but I think, there's so many, like, Xenos factions that haven't had proper miniatures and things to pull from, including the perfectly flat bears. I just want to dry brush a perfectly flat bear.
Like, it's the easiest breed to design, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're all just bases. Buy some bases.
I think they can fly, so they'd need a flying stand.
This sounds like something you've definitely made up.
I haven't.
I'll look to the show notes.
I can't Google it now because it's
we're in the middle of a podcast.
Oh, yeah, but nonetheless, I didn't make this up. There are perfectly flat bears in 40k. Trust me. Yes. Good. What are we talking about? Nick writes, Dear Destiny Dice have unfortunately fallen off the table and rolled under the bookcase. First, thank you both for the wonderful podcast. I came to Miniatures Monthly as a regular Crate and Crowbar listener. Before your podcast, I'd never played a miniatures game and only had passing familiarity with Warhammer through PC gaming and a couple of Horus Heresy novels. But still, I thought I'd give it a go, if only to fill dog walks with something a little more interesting than the usual game of what's that dog eating now? Following one of your podcasts, I bought a small collection of secondhand miniatures, some cheap terrain, grabbed a pile of dice out of the cupboard and sat down one weekend with my kids. I found tabletop gaming to be a fantastic way of bonding with both my son and daughter, who love the stories that we've created together. Daleks have battled Space Marines forces led by Captain No Arms, an Ultramarine captain who had an unfortunate encounter with the dog. Cybermen have clashed with orcs, and even the occasional dinosaur or Lego man has made an appearance. Our battles have become a weekly event, and the kids would pay every day given the chance. Thanks to you both for being a springboard for some wonderful moments with my family. My question: with 2 young children, I've had to learn to be a little flexible with the rules, with our battles rapidly moving from tabletop skirmishes to more in the direction of freeform D&D stories. I've learned to adapt, so if the Space Marine wants to hurl the crate he's hidden by at the approaching Cyberman, just because we don't have a rule for it yet, it doesn't mean it can't happen. Obviously, competition matches are exceptions, but have you ever been tempted to ignore some formal rules in your more story-led games with close friends in the name of fun? Obviously, this is actually extremely relevant to the discussion we just had, so maybe we don't have to go into huge depth, but in short, yes, and the more, the
more you do that, the better, almost, for this game system particularly.
Yeah, I think so. Like, it is I
mean, that's the story of how we made the event work, right? It's just like, coming up with rules on the fly for us that would just make sense and be quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, cause I mean, Pip has expressed interest in trying Warhammer, but only if she can play with the things she wants to play with, which includes like a plastic dinosaur and some nearby stuff and an upside down plant pot. And you know what I mean? Like, with no investment in like, cause I know that I get a bit stickler for lore and a bit stickler for like rules and things. And I like systems and I like order really. And being encouraged to shake that off is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's a game at the end of the day. And, people have sniffed at the fact that Games Workshop describe themselves as a model company that also produce some rules. That is at least honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you for sending the
and yeah, it's a lovely story as well.
That's really lovely. Yeah, that's super awesome.
And I'm glad that these 2 dowdy 31-year-old dudes or 30-odd-year-old dudes have passed on some real benefit to the world. Harry writes, Dear Miniatures Monthly, if you were playing a game of Kiss, Marry, Kill or Podcast for an evening with, and your choices were the 4 Chaos Gods, which would you pick for each and why? Also, where do you stand on the phrase, a lighthouse that eats wizards, as a description of the Emperor?
That's very good.
Thanks for the pods, Harry. I agree. I mean, it's more specifically a description of the Astronomicon, but yes.
No, that fits. It works.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
He does eat them.
So your choices are Kiss, Marry, Kill, and Podcast for an evening with.
So, most interesting conversationalist scene, she's going to tell a good story, spin a good yarn.
See, I feel like the key to a good, podcast relationship is like kind of
not being lied to relentlessly.
Yeah. Trusting that the other person is invested in the show in the same way that you are. Whereas she's just going to talk complete bollocks and lie to you and try and get one over on you and make you look stupid.
Oh, maybe
it'd be like
Slanesh. But I don't want to hear about Slanesh.
Yeah,
stories,
I mean, it'd be very loud. That's the
good theme tune.
Noise marine cancellation is going to be an issue. So I think they're all like podcast guest is the toughest one because Korn It might be Nurgle.
Nurgle will be very good on the podcast.
Yeah.
Nurgle will be full of jokes, relentless jokes. Good sort of burbly voice.
Yeah, good sort of attention to detail.
Edit out the kind of disease sounds of flies and vomiting and...
I mean, obviously and also, like, to be honest, I don't really want to kiss or marry Nurgle.
No.
I think
I don't want to kill Nurgle either.
I think I would, a podcast with Nurgle.
Yes.
I think I would kill Zinch. I don't know, it might be heresy coming for me. Because
lie down here on this psychoanalyst couch and let's talk about why you want to kill the army you spent 1,000 hours creating.
So it's either kill, so I know I want to marry Khorne. And the reason for this is I think a key to a stable relationship is kind of understanding what the other person wants. Yes. And I feel like I understand what Khorne wants. Khorne wants skulls and blood for the throne.
As long as he keeps supplying that.
And that's, I can respect that. He has hobbies. I don't feel that there'd be too much issue getting personal time, and you know how to spend an engaging time together. Because
so I can see all that.
Shared interest, you pick up some of their hobbies, you get into skulls.
That means you're kissing Slanesh, and isn't that too obvious?
Yeah, it is too obvious. That's why it's either kill Slanesh, kiss Zinch, or the other way around. And
kissing Zinch would be interesting. Who knows what you turn into? I mean, that's an adventure, right?
I feel like, maybe kissing Zinch should be okay. I don't know,
Beaky,
yeah.
Not great.
A little peck.
But then, Slanesh you get consumed by the tentacle monster. Not great.
Yeah, but it kind of happens either way. The reason for killing Zinch is I just feel like in all of these scenarios, these are all built around either a short, medium or long-term relationship. And I just don't feel like that's Zinch's strength. I feel like as the betrayer.
Yes.
Yes,
you don't want to marry Zinch.
No, you don't want to marry Zinch. You don't want to really...
talk to Zinch for any length of time. Be around Zinch. Yeah, killing Zinch.
Yeah. And you kiss Slanesh because,
it's what it's for, I suppose. It's why it exists. It's why humanity, the Eldar, I suppose.
Yeah, they did too much kissing.
Into being too much kissing. Here it is, kissing monster.
Exactly.
What else are you gonna do?
The kiss monster. I think that's probably settled. Maybe. Is it? Probably. Chris writes, to Age of Sigmarmite, and I can't Zinch, it's not butter. I read recently that GW are going to be getting into the gacha style blind buying market with a £5 Space Marine in a sealed bag. Bear in mind, some of these questions are quite old because we haven't potted in a while. Aside for fearing for people's wallets, this made me wonder what other opportunities and product ranges GW should be looking at, particularly in the run-up to Christmas. Where's the AOS mindfulness colouring book? Where's the advent calendar with doors hiding the 24 components that build a mini? Santa's sleigh, pulled by a snoot beast, perhaps. What non-hobby products would you like to see given the AOS spin? Thanks for all the good podding, Chris.
So that range was originally released in Japan, I believe. It's referring to the...
It's come out. It's over. It's Space Marine Heroes. It's out. It's over here now. Yeah, think, people buying them at minis live. Trying to think. I don't think I need more ways to buy stuff. I'd quite like, I don't know, a greater range of mugs. I know it's a really lame thing to say, but I'm always disappointed that there aren't more interesting mugs available. Or t-shirts. I wouldn't wear a t-shirt. What am I talking about?
Mugs is private home things that...
private home things that don't go outside.
Mugs are good for that, for sure. I'm a massive sucker for kind of hobby tool gubbins. So I bought a painting handle last week, which is actually really...
They're good.
They're genuinely really great. And it improved my painting because I don't, my sweat doesn't peel the paint off the model as I'm holding onto it forever. But that's just a little accessory. Lots of little accessories for Christmas is kind of the sort of thing I'd ask for. Like the brush holders, that kind of paint, brush soap. I bought actually quite an expensive wet palette at Minis Monthly Live. And that's quite good as well. Just stuff around the hobby that's actually contributes to the hobby.
Yeah.
Rather than just, or a mug.
Yeah.
And or a mug.
Good. Tom Hatfield, who we know very well, writes in to say, hi everyone, recently I was watching Hangout and Paint and did a double take when Duncan offhandedly mentioned that Games Workshop used to have a record label. After doing some research, I found out that they only released one album. What's the pod's take on this? In this age of resurrecting classic GW products with modern twists, should Warhammer Records make a comeback? So that album is D-Rock, I think. I listened to some of it earlier. It's appalling, but like exactly, it was the early 90s and no one understood what was going on with rock music.
Very good. This is very good knowledge I did not know before this question started.
I'll play you some after the pod.
Excellent. I look forward to it.
It's bad, but like, I would be all for this, but I feel like it would be impossible to do unironically now. And it needs to be unironic because that's where the charm comes from. And I don't know I think maybe they're too self-aware now. It's too obviously uncool. Obviously this is a way for me to get to finally do my Warhammer musical, which is all I really want. So
it would have to be really ironic. That musical, like it can't, like, would you do a completely earnest? Could you?
I think you play it completely straight.
Sure.
Because I mean, because we've said it a million times, Warhammer 40,000 is one altogether now from turning into a musical at the best of times. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing that it wouldn't fit. It would fit real well, but it's like, maybe that's so. Yeah, Hamilton is fading. We need something on Broadway to reinvigorate the musical.
Exactly.
And it's time for
Abaddon.
It's time for Abaddon. That's
Abaddon with exclamation mark.
Yeah.
It's basically just Mamma Mia.
And okay. That is an extra reason to resurrect. You have to get some legal framework around it. Probably start a label. Probably license all those songs to that label or something. I don't know how it works. Who knows?
No, me neither. Next question comes from Kingsley, who writes, hi, Christmas and Tom. It's time to draw your names for the Warhammer Pantheon Office Secret Santa. What do you buy, the god who has everything? You hope to get one of your mates, Tzeentch and Sigmar, but what if you draw Nagash from IT? The budget is 15 souls. Cheers, Kingsley. Bonus question, which god are you hoping draws your name? I think everyone is hoping Nurgle isn't taking part this year.
Ooh. Well, 15 souls buys you 15 human skins, and you could probably cover a bit of Nagash with that.
That's a very good answer.
But which bit? Left arm.
I think giving souls to Nagash would be not a great Secret Santa because he'd just be like,
15 souls.
These are mine anyway.
Yeah,
you've just given me my own property back.
And it's just 15. Like, I have like billions of these.
Yeah, I mean, I would
be offended.
I think that, you want to get Khorne because you know what he likes. Again, it comes back to that, right?
Yeah, hit him a sharp object.
You just give him some skulls.
Oh yeah.
You're just like, it's skulls. And the thing is, he's not going to be like, it's skulls again. It's like, oh.
That's the one thing I like. It's the only thing I like.
He likes blood as well, but, like, he'd be delighted. That'd be really good. I think if you were to, I think you kind of want Sigmar to get you, or Grungni. You want one of the gods of order.
Grungni would be a good one.
He'd make you something cool.
He'd make you something rad. Like a really cool letter opener.
Khorne would make you something rad, but then you'd have like 8 mouths and they'd all scream all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Tzeentch's gift would backfire, obviously. Slaanesh gift would be too much. Nurgle's gift would kill you, literally. Most of the other gods are going to screw you over. Sigmar would probably screw you over. It'd be like, you're big and golden made of lightning now, but you're my slave.
Yeah.
Whereas Grungni, I think, would just make you
a nice thing.
Like a big monocle or something.
Just like a super cool pair of bookends.
Yeah, exactly. A gun.
Or a gun. That's good, isn't it?
Next question comes from James, who writes, hi, Chris and Tom. At the time of writing, it's a scant handful of nights until your soon-to-be legendary first official meetup. So, dating this email somewhat.
Particular question.
And to help pass the time, I'm revisiting the back catalogue episodes from the beginning. As a rookie beginner to AOS, but a veteran of over a decade of tabletop wargaming, it's fun to hear your journey as players. In the episodes where you first approached the idea of a meetup, Tom mentions that he'd like to be taught bolt action.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible bolt action player who frequently has his German foot soldiers run headlong into the guns of my friends' allies. So the task of teaching you shouldn't fall to me, but hopefully some other sufficiently skilled players up to the job. On this note, other than the usual GW favourites such as Kill Team and Shadespire, which other games from the broader tabletop hobby are tempting you with the possibility of tiny plastic soldiers in other tiny plastic wars? Love the plod.
Love the pod. It's a frequent companion for me on walks to and from work while grinding away at the ever-growing pile of hobby. Thanks, James. Cool. So yes, other game systems that you might be tempted into. I feel like having had a big chat about not getting tempted into other things, but yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's always that temptation, right? And I think that bolt action is in my future in some form, and Chip and I have discussed it a lot. And like, the stuff that's held me back from it, apart from just the obvious chain pile and expense reasons, it's just like, don't want to paint a Nazi. Don't want to paint Nazi half track. And I feel like so conflicted and weird about that it really sort of puts, I know like this is my hang up, but like.
No, I get it as well.
Yeah, and as, there is like, I'd paint it some like British commandos or something, or, you know, some Russian soldiers, whatever. But I don't know, I've read so much into that period of history that it's almost like too real to really be a game completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd be more likely to play like a classical historical or like a Dark Ages historical.
Yeah.
Vikings and Saxons and stuff.
Yeah, just it's more removed from modern history in a way that
it
doesn't impact directly on our time in as much as in such an intense way. But at the same time, the game system looks rad, looks really cool. And I'd certainly do some test games of it, and maybe I'll probably could overcome my hang-ups if the game's super, super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be ace. Yeah, maybe. I still think, Star Wars Legion may convince me to buy a couple extra models and play a little bit more of it.
Yeah.
I do like that game.
Yeah, it seemed really nice that we did that test game.
Our final question comes from Stuart, who writes, Howdy, Chris and Tom. You've both been hired by Games Workshop to oversee the narrative, art design and creation of a new Primarch for the recently rediscovered 2nd and 11th Legions.
Ooh, okay.
How would you each go about integrating your new Legion into the 40k universe, and which side would they serve? Personally, I'd go for the maximum nerd rage option of making my new Legion fully Lady Marines. Their leader is called Pandorus Vox, a Chaos Primatriarch, determined to antagonize the Imperium into total self-destruction. Lots of love, Stuart. I was going to say female Primarchs as well, for the remaining two, because I think that's kind of leaving some stuff on the table otherwise. But yeah, I think more about theme. I think obviously like a good Space Marine Legion has a little echo of something from real history in it.
Yeah.
And cause you've got your Romans, you've got your Egyptians, pretty much.
You've got your vampires,
you've
got
Mongols,
your wolfmen.
Vampires, wolfmen, Vikings.
Those famous human flaws.
Yeah.
Being a wolf.
You've got your gothy Middle Ages knight, and monks.
Yeah.
You've got your goths, just in general. I think, I'm trying to think what sort of, part of human history is not represented with a Primarch. Like,
They've covered a lot of bases.
they have.
There's also like, I think there's a human flaw element, right? That each of the Primarchs has like a terrible flaw that sort of to an extent defines the way they work. And
Yeah.
apart from with perhaps the exception of Guilliman, but he's such a stickler for the rules and he's perhaps a bit inflexible compared to other, like there's always something, right? Like there's a human flaw.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the, like what the most fun one would be
Yeah.
to kind of explore. I think I would kind of like to see a legion, like a loyalist legion that had a sort of like almost like a overabundant self-confidence but hadn't fallen. Like a kind of more like
a reverse Emperor's Children almost.
yeah, like, but with some of the same sort of like, we're really good at this. Like,
Yeah.
and basically maybe themed after like pirates.
Why not?
You know what I mean?
There's
Like
not there must be a pirates.
there isn't a pirates one.
Oh no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe like some kind of sort of, female swashbuckling kind of charismatic Primarch.
Marine.
Primarch.
Primarch.
I'd go for that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I don't know how you'd express pirate, really, but like faintly nautical.
Yeah.
Faintly nautical.
Pirate Marines.
Pirate Marines. That's my suggestion.
Okay. I can't think the only thing I can think of is the lazy Marines. And they embody the human trait of just can't be asked. And the reason they haven't been discovered or participated is because they just really didn't want to. And they're apathetic, and they're amazing. They probably have the hottest golden age technology available, and they don't even want to share it or really talk to anyone. And they just don't want a future plan.
Good. You might be projecting a little bit there, Tom.
Quite tired.
But yes, that is all the questions we've got time for this month. We'll be back in the new year. More minis monthly.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, thanks again to everyone who came to the event and sent us stuff, and I'll work on some show notes for this episode to give a props where props are due for all the effort that's gone in.
Yes.
Obviously, if you'd like to find Miniatures Monthly online, we're on crateandcrowbar.com. That's where you'll find those show notes. You can also find us on Twitter at Minis Monthly. And you can find us individually posting pictures of the same Blackstone Fortress miniatures.
Painted very similarly
on Instagram, where I can be found at Exit Warp.
And I am at Ludo Paints Minis, and that's Ludo Paints Minis.
Lovely. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening.